Boring history for sleep. Why you wouldn't survive as a Viking, Part 1. Hello, and tonight we are traveling back more than 1,000 years to a world of icy winds, dark forests, and endless hardship. A world where surviving a single week was an achievement. A world where being a Viking was far less exciting than modern movies would have you believe. So, before you get comfortable and imagine yourself as a fearless warrior sailing across the seas in search of glory, treasure, and adventure, you should know one important thing. You probably wouldn't survive. Not because you lacked courage, not because you were weak, but because Viking life was mostly cold, hungry, exhausting, and deeply uncomfortable. Tonight, we will slowly drift into the harsh reality of everyday Viking life. And, as always, if you enjoy these historical journeys, make yourself comfortable, close your eyes, and allow history to gently carry you to sleep. Our story begins in Scandinavia around the 9th century. Imagine waking up before sunrise on a cold winter morning. There is no alarm clock, no electric heater, no soft mattress. Instead, you are lying on a rough bed stuffed with straw and covered by animal skins that smell faintly of smoke and sheep. The air inside your home is cold. Very cold. Outside, the wind howls across the mountains and fjords. Snow has collected around the wooden walls of your family's longhouse. Somewhere nearby, a cow is making an unpleasant sound, a dog is barking, and the smoke from last night's fire still hangs heavily in the air. Welcome to your new life as a Viking. The first thing you notice is that Vikings did not live in the glamorous world portrayed in movies. Most Vikings were not warriors, they were farmers. And farming in Scandinavia was difficult. The growing season was short, winters were long, the soil was often rocky and unforgiving. Every year became a struggle against hunger, weather, and bad luck. Your day begins before the sun rises. You gather wood, feed animals, repair tools, and prepare food. There are no weekends, no holidays, no vacations. Every day is survival. Breakfast, if you're lucky, consists of porridge made from barley or oats. It is warm, but not particularly delicious. There is no coffee waiting for you, no fresh bread from a bakery, no sweet pastries. Instead, you eat because you must. As you step outside the longhouse, the cold air hits your face like a wall. The ground beneath your feet is frozen. You pull your wool clothing tighter around your body, but it doesn't help very much. Wool was practical, it was not comfortable. In fact, almost everything about Viking life was practical and uncomfortable. Your clothing itches, your shoes leak, your hands are rough from work, and there's a good chance you haven't had a proper bath in several days. Contrary to popular myths, Vikings actually cared about cleanliness. They washed more often than many Europeans of their time. The problem was that winter in Scandinavia was very cold, and nobody enjoys washing in freezing water. As the morning progresses, your work continues. Perhaps you repair fishing nets, perhaps you cut wood, perhaps you care for sheep or goats. Whatever your task, one thing remains true: you work, and then you work some more. Food is always a concern. Modern people often assume that historical societies had endless feasts and celebrations, but for ordinary Vikings, food shortages were a constant fear. A bad harvest could destroy everything. One difficult winter meant starvation. Some historians believe that hunger shaped almost every aspect of Viking society. It influenced where people traveled, where they settled, and why some eventually decided to leave their homes entirely and sail across dangerous seas. And dangerous those seas certainly were. You may have imagined yourself standing heroically at the front of a Viking longship, your hair blowing dramatically in the wind. The reality was less impressive. Viking ships were remarkable achievements of engineering, but they were not luxurious. They were crowded, wet, uncomfortable, and terrifying during storms. Imagine sitting for hours, sometimes days, surrounded by cold seawater, strong winds, and dozens of equally miserable people. There are no bathrooms, no beds, no warm meals, just endless rowing, endless waves, and endless uncertainty. And then there is the weather. The weather, unfortunately, does not care about your dreams of adventure. Storms appear suddenly, waves crash over the sides of the ship, people become seasick, supplies become soaked, everyone becomes cold, very cold. At this point, you might begin to question whether becoming a Viking was really the excellent career choice you originally imagined. And, honestly, that would be a very reasonable conclusion, because despite the legends, despite the stories of treasure and conquest, most Viking lives were defined not by glory, but by endurance. The endurance of cold, the endurance of hunger, the endurance of exhaustion. And this was only the beginning, because tomorrow morning you will wake up once again inside your smoky longhouse, pull on your uncomfortable wool clothing, and face another day in one of history's harshest environments. If, of course, you survive the winter.
Boring history for sleep. Why you wouldn't survive as a Viking, Part 2. As the long winter evening settles over Scandinavia, you return to your longhouse after another exhausting day of work. From the outside, the building appears sturdy enough. Thick wooden walls protect you from the wind, and the roof, covered with turf and grass, helps keep some warmth inside. But appearances can be deceiving. The moment you step through the doorway, you are greeted by three things: smoke, animals, and more smoke. Unlike modern homes, Viking longhouses did not have proper chimneys. Instead, the smoke from the central fire slowly drifted upward before escaping through openings in the roof. At least, that was the plan. In reality, much of the smoke simply remained inside. Your eyes burn, your clothes smell of smoke, your hair smells of smoke, and after several years, your lungs probably do too. The longhouse is crowded, very crowded. Your family lives here, perhaps your grandparents, maybe an aunt or uncle, several children, a few servants, and during the winter months, some of your animals may also share the building. The sheep make noise, the goats make noise, the people make noise. Privacy, unfortunately, does not exist. If you wanted a quiet evening alone with your thoughts, Viking society had some disappointing news for you. Dinner, however, is finally ready. You sit near the fire and receive a bowl of stew. The contents of the stew are uncertain. Perhaps fish, perhaps cabbage, perhaps barley, possibly all three. The good news is that it is warm. The bad news is that tomorrow's meal will probably be very similar, and the day after that, and the day after that. Fresh food during winter is rare. Much of what you eat has been dried, salted, smoked, or preserved for months. The taste is not terrible, but it is not exactly exciting either. As you eat, stories begin. This may be the best part of Viking life. Someone tells a tale of a great voyage to distant lands. Another speaks of strange creatures that live in the forests. An older family member remembers a winter so harsh that entire villages nearly starved. The stories pass the time, and in a world without television, smartphones, or electricity, stories are everything. Outside, the wind continues to howl. Winter in Scandinavia is not simply cold, it is relentless. Snow covers the landscape for months, rivers freeze, travel becomes dangerous, food supplies shrink. Every family worries about one thing: will there be enough food until spring? If the answer is no, the consequences are severe. There are no supermarkets, no delivery services, no emergency relief programs. There is only preparation, endurance, and hope. Disease presents another challenge. Modern medicine does not exist. If you develop an infection from a small cut, that infection may become life-threatening. A toothache can become deadly. A fever can change from uncomfortable to fatal in only a few days. Doctors, as you understand them, do not exist. Instead, people rely on herbal remedies, traditional knowledge, and prayer. Sometimes these treatments help, sometimes they do not. Life expectancy is short. Many children never reach adulthood. Many adults never reach old age. And yet, despite these hardships, life continues because it must. The fire in the center of the longhouse burns lower. One by one, family members prepare for sleep. You settle onto your bed of straw and animal skins once again. It is not comfortable. You can feel the hard ground beneath you. Somewhere nearby, a sheep makes an unpleasant sound. Someone is snoring. The fire crackles softly, and smoke still drifts through the room. As you close your eyes, you think about tomorrow. Tomorrow will bring more work, more cold, more hunger, and perhaps, if you are fortunate, another day of survival. Because despite everything modern movies have taught you, being a Viking was rarely about glory. It was about enduring one difficult day after another. And as the winter wind blows against the walls of the longhouse, you slowly drift into sleep, hoping that spring will arrive before your food runs out. Unfortunately, spring is still very far away.
Eventually, after many long weeks of cold weather, hard labor, and smoky evenings inside the longhouse, you hear news that changes everything. A local leader is preparing a voyage. Not a pleasant voyage, not a relaxing vacation, a Viking voyage. And somehow, perhaps through bad luck, poor judgment, or simply because nobody else volunteered, you have agreed to join. At first, the idea sounds exciting. You imagine adventure. You imagine treasure. You imagine returning home as a hero whose stories will be remembered for generations. Unfortunately, reality has other plans. The first thing you discover is that preparing for a Viking voyage is almost as exhausting as the voyage itself. Ships require repairs, ropes must be inspected, food must be preserved, weapons must be sharpened. Every person works from sunrise until sunset. There is no dramatic music playing in the background. There is only hard labor. Eventually, the day of departure arrives. The morning air is cold and damp. Mist hangs over the water. The ship itself looks impressive from a distance. Long, narrow, beautifully crafted, and completely lacking in comfort. You step aboard carefully. Immediately, you notice a problem. There is nowhere comfortable to sit. There are no cabins, no beds, no blankets, no private spaces, just wooden planks and dozens of other people who are already beginning to regret their decisions. As the ship leaves the shore, you watch your home disappear into the distance. At first, everything feels exciting. The waves are gentle. The wind is favorable. The crew is optimistic. Some people even smile. This optimism lasts approximately 3 hours. Because after 3 hours, your back hurts. After 6 hours, your legs hurt. And after 12 hours, you begin to understand that Viking travel was essentially a prolonged exercise in discomfort. The ocean does not care about your comfort. The wind becomes stronger. The ship rocks violently. Several people become seasick. Soon the sounds of vomiting become an unfortunate part of daily life. You discover another unpleasant truth. There are no bathrooms. If you need to relieve yourself, you must do so while balancing on a moving ship in cold weather, surrounded by equally miserable travelers. Suddenly, life back in the smoky longhouse does not seem quite so terrible. Days pass. The weather changes constantly. Sometimes the sea is calm and beautiful, but more often it is cold, wet, and frightening. Storms can appear without warning. Dark clouds gather. The wind screams. Waves crash against the sides of the ship. Water pours across the deck. Everyone becomes soaked. Everyone becomes cold. And everyone begins to wonder if this voyage was a terrible mistake. The answer, unfortunately, is yes. At night, sleeping is nearly impossible. You attempt to rest while sitting against a wooden bench. Your body aches. The air is freezing. The ship rocks endlessly. Someone nearby is snoring. Someone else is praying. Another person is probably questioning every life choice that brought them to this exact moment. Food aboard the ship is also disappointing. Very disappointing. Most meals consist of dried fish, hard bread, or preserved meat. Everything tastes salty. Everything tastes old. And after several days, everything tastes exactly the same. Fresh water becomes precious. Supplies must be rationed carefully. Nobody receives extra portions. Nobody complains. Or rather, people do complain, but complaining does not create more food. One evening, as the sun slowly disappears below the horizon, you stare at the endless ocean surrounding you. There is no land, no lights, no signs of civilization, only darkness. For the first time, you realize how dangerous this journey truly is. If the ship sinks, there are no rescue teams, no emergency signals, no Coast Guard. There is only cold water, and cold water in the North Atlantic is extremely good at killing people. Some voyages never return. Entire crews disappear. Families wait for months or years without ever learning what happened. The ocean keeps its secrets. Yet despite all these dangers, Vikings continued to sail. Not because it was enjoyable, not because it was comfortable, but because survival often demanded it. Trade demanded it, exploration demanded it, and sometimes simple desperation demanded it. As another freezing night settles over the sea, you pull your wool cloak tighter around your shoulders. It does not help very much. The wind remains cold. The ship continues to rock, and somewhere in the darkness ahead, more hardship is waiting. Because if you thought surviving the voyage was difficult, you have not yet experienced what happens when you finally arrive.
After days, perhaps even weeks, of cold winds, rough seas, and uncomfortable sleep, someone aboard the ship suddenly points toward the horizon. Land. At first, relief washes over you. Solid ground, fresh water, a chance to stretch your legs, perhaps even a warm meal. But then you remember why you came here. You did not cross the North Atlantic for comfort. You came because your leader believes there is wealth to be found. And unfortunately for you, finding that wealth may involve fighting. Modern movies often portray Vikings as fearless warriors who loved battle. The truth is far less exciting. Most people throughout history did not enjoy combat, and Vikings were no exception. Because combat is not glorious. Combat is frightening. As the ship approaches the shore, your heart begins to beat faster. The men around you become quieter.
No one tells jokes. No one sings. Everyone understands the risk. You step into the cold water and pull the ship onto the beach. Your boots immediately fill with icy seawater. This is not an encouraging start. The group moves inland carefully. The weather remains cold. Your clothes remain wet, and every step reminds you that you have spent far too many days sitting on a wooden boat. Eventually, you reach a small settlement. This is the moment that legends celebrate. The brave Viking warriors, the dramatic battle cries, the glorious victory. Reality, however, is much less dramatic. Reality involves confusion, fear, mud, and an alarming amount of running. Nobody wants to be hit by a sword. Nobody wants to be struck by an axe. And nobody wants to discover whether their shield is actually strong enough. You grip your weapon tightly. Your hands are shaking, not because you are weak, because you are human. The first sounds of battle are terrifying. People shouting, metal striking wood, the cries of injured men. The chaos is overwhelming. There are no organized battle plans, no inspiring speeches, no heroic music, only confusion and fear. If you are lucky, the battle ends quickly. If you are unlucky, it lasts longer, much longer. The problem with medieval combat is that even if you survive, survival itself creates new problems. A small cut can become infected. A broken bone may never heal properly. A damaged eye remains damaged forever. There are no antibiotics, no hospitals, no emergency surgery. In fact, one of the greatest dangers in history was not dying during battle. It was surviving battle. Imagine receiving a wound that would be considered minor today, perhaps a deep cut on your arm. In the modern world, you would visit a hospital. In the Viking world, you hope for the best. And hope is not always an effective medical treatment. As evening approaches, the excitement of battle quickly disappears. Now there are injured people, exhausted people, hungry people, and everyone is cold. Again. You sit beside a small fire. Your body hurts. Your feet hurt. Your back hurts. You are tired in ways I never imagined possible. Someone nearby speaks quietly about returning home. Another person stares silently into the flames. Nobody talks about glory anymore, because glory is difficult to appreciate when you have not slept properly in several days. As darkness falls, you begin to understand something important about Viking life. Most of it was waiting. Waiting for food, waiting for better weather, waiting for ships, waiting for spring, waiting to discover whether you would survive another year. The heroic stories that survive through history represent only a tiny part of reality. The reality was discomfort. The reality was uncertainty. And the reality was that almost everyone, regardless of courage or strength, eventually lost their battle against age, illness, injury, or simple bad luck. You lie down beneath the cold night sky. There is no comfortable bed waiting for you, no warm house, no guarantee of tomorrow. Only the stars above, the wind around you, and the growing realization that perhaps being a Viking was not the exciting adventure you once imagined. And unfortunately, the hardest part of Viking life may still be waiting for you. Because eventually, if you survive the battles, the storms, the hunger, and the cold, you must face something even more challenging: growing old in the Viking world.
If, through some extraordinary combination of luck, determination, and sheer stubbornness, you manage to survive the freezing winters, the dangerous voyages, and the terrifying battles, you eventually return home, or at least what remains of home. The journey back is no easier than the journey out. The weather is still cold. The sea is still unforgiving, and your body is now several years older than it feels. When you finally see the familiar coastline of Scandinavia appear on the horizon, you experience something you have not felt in a very long time: relief. Not excitement, not glory, just relief. You step off the ship carefully. The ground beneath your feet feels strange after so many days at sea. Your family greets you warmly.
If you are fortunate, everyone you left behind is still alive. Unfortunately, in the Viking world, that was never guaranteed. Disease, accidents, starvation, winter, all of these could take someone's life long before you returned home. And so, after a brief celebration, life returns to what it has always been: work. Because Viking society did not reward retirement, there were no pensions, no savings accounts, no comfortable cottages waiting by the sea. If you wanted to eat, you worked. If you wanted to survive the winter, you worked. If you wanted your family to survive, you worked even harder. As the years pass, new responsibilities arrive. Perhaps you marry. Perhaps you begin a family. Modern people often imagine Viking weddings as grand celebrations filled with romance and adventure. The truth, once again, was much more practical. Marriage was often about survival, about land, about family alliances, about ensuring that enough people existed to work the farm. Love certainly existed, but love alone did not harvest crops. Soon, children arrive, and while children brought joy, they also brought anxiety. Childhood in the Viking Age was dangerous. Many children did not survive their first years. Illnesses that modern medicine easily treats could become deadly. A fever, a cough, an infection, any one of these could change a family's life forever. As a parent, you worry constantly. You worry about food. You worry about winter. You worry about sickness. You worry about whether your children will survive long enough to become adults. And then there is the simple reality of daily life. The farm always needs attention. Animals must be fed. Wood must be gathered. Tools must be repaired. Clothing must be made. Nothing is easy. Nothing is quick. Everything requires labor. Years pass, then more years. Gradually, you begin to notice changes. Your back hurts more than it once did. Your hands ache after working. Old injuries return during cold weather. Perhaps you remember that storm at sea or that battle many years ago. Your body remembers, and unfortunately, it never forgets. Growing old in the Viking world was not a peaceful experience. There were no painkillers, no physical therapy, no comfortable retirement homes. Old age simply meant continuing to work until your body could no longer continue. Some people remained strong for many years, others did not. And in a society where survival depended on physical labor, growing weaker was a frightening reality. Winter becomes harder. The cold feels colder. The work feels heavier. The nights feel longer. Yet life continues because it always has. One evening, after another long day of labor, you sit beside the fire in your longhouse. The same smoke fills the air. The same wind blows outside. The same concerns remain. Will there be enough food? Will the winter be harsh? Will your family survive another year? As the fire slowly burns lower and the sounds of the longhouse grow quiet, you pull your blanket closer and prepare for sleep. Tomorrow will bring more work, more cold, and another chance to survive, if you are fortunate enough to see the sunrise.
If there was one thing that occupied the minds of ordinary Vikings more than war, more than travel, and perhaps even more than the weather, it was food. Or more accurately, the lack of food. In the modern world, hunger is often a temporary inconvenience. You open a refrigerator, you order delivery, you visit a store. In the Viking world, none of these options existed. Food was not guaranteed. Food was survival. And every day began with the same question: would there be enough? Imagine waking up in the middle of winter. The sun rises late, very late. The air inside the longhouse is cold, despite the fire that burned through the night. Outside, snow covers the fields. Nothing grows. Nothing moves. And yet, your family still needs to eat. You reach for the food stores collected during the summer and autumn months: barrels of dried fish, sacks of barley, smoked meat, perhaps some preserved vegetables, if you are fortunate. If you are not fortunate, the barrels are already becoming empty. This was one of the greatest fears in Viking society. Not battle, not storms, not even disease. Hunger. Because hunger changed everything. At first, hunger made people tired. Then it made them weak. Then it made them desperate. A single bad harvest could destroy years of preparation. A summer with too much rain, a winter that lasted too long, a disease affecting livestock. Any of these disasters could push an entire community toward starvation. And unfortunately, nature was not known for its kindness. Breakfast, if such a word can even be used, was often simple, very simple. Perhaps a bowl of porridge, perhaps a small piece of bread, perhaps nothing. There were no sweet cereals, no coffee, no eggs cooked exactly how you preferred them. Just enough food to continue working, because stopping work was not an option. As the day progresses, everyone contributes. Children work, adults work, elderly people work as much as they can. The farm demands constant attention, and the cruel reality is that farming in Scandinavia was difficult even during good years. The soil was rocky, the weather unpredictable, the growing season short. Success required hard work, but hard work alone was never enough. Luck also played a role, and history has repeatedly demonstrated that luck can be unreliable. Fishing offered another source of food. However, fishing was not a peaceful hobby enjoyed on sunny afternoons. Fishing was dangerous. Cold water, strong winds, heavy nets. A single mistake could send someone into freezing water, and freezing water has very little interest in allowing people to survive. Yet people continued fishing because the alternative was hunger. Occasionally, there were feasts. These were the moments remembered in stories: roasted meat, ale, music, celebration. But feasts were rare precisely because everyday life was not. Most days involved simple meals eaten quickly between long hours of labor. By late winter, food supplies often became dangerously low. Families reduced portions, meals became smaller, everyone worried. No one spoke about it openly, but everyone thought about it. Would the food last until spring? It was a question with enormous consequences, because spring itself created another problem. Historians sometimes refer to this period as the hungry season. Winter supplies were almost exhausted, new crops had not yet grown, animals were weaker, people were weaker, and everyone waited. Waited for warmer weather, waited for fresh food, waited for relief. Some years relief arrived, other years it did not. And when famine came, it came without mercy. Entire communities suffered. Families made impossible decisions. People traveled in search of food, hoping that somewhere else conditions might be better. Sometimes they were, often they were not. As evening arrives, you sit once again beside the fire inside the longhouse. Dinner is small, smaller than yesterday, and perhaps smaller than tomorrow. The room is quiet. The children are tired. The adults are worried. Outside, the wind continues its endless journey across the frozen landscape. You stare into the flames and realize something profound. The greatest Viking skill was not fighting. It was enduring uncertainty. not knowing whether there would be enough food, not knowing whether spring would arrive soon enough, not knowing if your family would survive another winter. And despite all the legends, all the stories, and all the myths, this was the true challenge of Viking life: to wake up each day in a cold and unforgiving world and continue anyway. As the fire burns lower and darkness fills the longhouse, you pull your wool blanket around yourself. It is scratchy, it smells faintly of smoke, and it does very little to keep away the cold. But tonight, like every night before it, it will have to be enough. Because tomorrow, if you are fortunate, another difficult day will begin.
The long Scandinavian winter seems to last forever. Day after day, the sky remains gray. The sun appears only briefly, as though it has somewhere more important to be. The wind never truly stops, and the cold settles into everything. It creeps through the cracks in the longhouse walls. It seeps into your boots. It settles into your bones. You wake one morning and discover that your fingers are stiff and numb. The fire in the center of the longhouse has nearly gone out. Someone quickly adds more wood, and a few weak flames begin to dance once again. But keeping warm is a constant battle. You wear wool, layers of wool, more wool than you ever thought possible, yet somehow you are still cold. The animals are cold too. The sheep huddle together. The goats stay close to the fire. Even the family dog seems unhappy. Winter is difficult for everyone, but for humans, winter brings another danger: illness. At first, it begins with a cough. Someone in the longhouse clears their throat. Then another person starts coughing. Then another. Soon, half the family is sneezing and shivering beside the fire. Today, a cold is usually little more than an inconvenience. You drink warm tea, you rest, perhaps you take medicine. In the Viking Age, things were very different. A simple illness could become serious. A serious illness could become deadly. There were no antibiotics, no pharmacies, no hospitals, no emergency rooms. Instead, people relied on experience, herbs, and hope. A wise woman in the village might prepare remedies using plants and roots. Some treatments worked surprisingly well. Others were less effective, and some probably tasted absolutely terrible. Imagine drinking a mysterious herbal mixture already feeling miserable. It is not exactly comforting. If a fever develops, everyone becomes concerned. The sick person rests near the fire. Family members watch carefully. They wait and hope, because that is often all they can do. The human body is remarkable, but it is also fragile. A cough can become pneumonia. A small wound can become infected. A fever can grow worse overnight. And in the Viking world, even minor illnesses carried risks. Children are especially vulnerable. Parents worry constantly. A child who seems perfectly healthy one day may become dangerously ill the next. There is little anyone can do except provide warmth, water, and care. These were harsh realities that every family understood. Even injuries that seem small by modern standards can become serious. Imagine cutting your hand while chopping wood. At first, it seems unimportant. You wrap the wound, you continue working. A few days later, the cut becomes red and painful. Soon, you develop a fever. Now, the entire situation is much more serious. Infections were among history's silent killers. They arrived quietly and often ended tragically. As winter continues, another problem emerges: the darkness. The nights are long, very long.
Sometimes it feels as though the sun has abandoned the world entirely. People spend many hours indoors. The longhouse becomes crowded. Everyone grows restless. Tempers occasionally become short. Even the strongest person can grow tired of months of cold, darkness, and smoke. The stories help. Songs help. Sharing meals help. But winter remains winter. One evening, as snow falls outside, you sit close to the fire and listen to the wind. The sound is strangely comforting. The flames crackle softly. Someone nearby is quietly repairing a piece of clothing. Another family member tells an old story that everyone has heard many times before, yet no one complains, because stories pass the long nights, and long nights need passing. As you watch the firelight dance across the wooden walls, you realize something. The Vikings were not extraordinary because they enjoyed hardship. They were extraordinary because they endured it. They lived in a place where winter seemed endless, where sickness could appear without warning, where even small problems could become serious. And yet, they continued. They worked, they laughed, they raised families, they told stories, and they faced each new winter with remarkable determination. The fire begins to burn lower. One by one, people prepare for sleep. Outside, snow continues to fall. Inside, the longhouse grows quiet. You wrap yourself in your wool blanket and lie down upon your bed of straw. It is still uncomfortable. The room still smells faintly of smoke, and tomorrow will probably be just as cold as today. But for now, you close your eyes. The wind whispers outside, the fire crackles softly, and another long Viking winter night slowly drifts by.
If you happened to be born into a Viking family, there was one piece of disappointing news that you would learn very quickly. Childhood was not designed to be enjoyable. In the modern world, children often spend their days learning, playing, watching television, or exploring the internet. In the Viking Age, children spent their days preparing to survive, and they began preparing very early. Imagine being 6 years old. Not 6 years old with toys, cartoons, and birthday parties. 6 years old with responsibilities. Real responsibilities. The moment you were old enough to walk, people expected you to help. Perhaps you gathered firewood. Perhaps you carried water. Perhaps you helped feed the animals. Nobody asked whether you felt like working. The work simply needed to be done, and everyone contributed. A Viking child quickly learned an important lesson. The world was not particularly interested in comfort. The longhouse itself became a classroom. Parents taught their children everything they knew: how to farm, how to fish, how to repair tools, how to survive winter. There were no school buses, no report cards, no summer vacations. Instead, every day offered practical lessons, and making mistakes could have serious consequences. Boys and girls both worked hard. Young boys learned farming, fishing, sailing, and eventually fighting. Young girls learned cooking, weaving, caring for animals, and managing households. Of course, reality was often more complicated. Everyone helped wherever help was needed, because survival was more important than tradition. Children also learned through observation. They watched adults constantly, how they worked, how they spoke, how they solved problems, how they survived. This was education in its purest form, and it lasted all day, every day. There was, however, some time for play. Even in difficult societies, children remain children. Archaeologists have discovered toys from the Viking Age: small wooden figures, simple board games, tiny carved boats. For brief moments, children could forget about work and simply enjoy being young. But those moments were often short, because winter was coming.
Winter was always coming, and winter required preparation. By the age of 10 or 12, many children carried responsibilities that modern adults might find exhausting. They worked in fields, they cared for livestock, they gathered supplies, they assisted with fishing and household tasks. There was no concept of adolescence as we understand it today. There was childhood, and then quite suddenly, there was adulthood. The dangers of childhood were everywhere. Illness remained a constant threat. Accidents happened frequently. A fall, an infection, a harsh winter. Any of these could change a family's future forever. Parents understood this reality. Perhaps that is why family bonds were so important. Everyone depended upon everyone else. A child was not simply a child. A child represented hope, a future worker, a future parent, a future survivor. As the years passed, children gradually became adults. There was no ceremony announcing that life would become difficult, because life had already been difficult. A young person might marry in their teenage years. They might begin working full-time long before that. They might experience hardships that would challenge even the strongest modern person. And yet, somehow, generation after generation continued. One winter evening, you sit beside the fire and watch the younger children in the longhouse. One child plays with a carved wooden animal. Another listens carefully to an elder telling a familiar story. Outside, the wind blows across the snow-covered landscape. Inside, the fire provides warmth and light. For a brief moment, everything feels peaceful, but everyone understands an important truth. Those children will soon grow up. They will face the same winters, the same hunger, the same uncertainty, the same endless work. Because this was the reality of Viking life. Not constant adventure, not endless battles, but the quiet, difficult challenge of surviving one ordinary day after another. As the fire crackles softly and the children slowly drift to sleep, you realize that perhaps the strongest Vikings were not the warriors who sailed across oceans. Perhaps they were the children who learned from their very first years how to endure a world that offered very little comfort. And tomorrow morning, before the sun fully rises, they too will wake up and begin again.
After days, perhaps even weeks, of cold winds, rough seas, and uncomfortable sleep, someone aboard the ship suddenly points toward the horizon. Land. At first, relief washes over you. Solid ground, fresh water, a chance to stretch your legs, perhaps even a warm meal. But then you remember why you came here. You did not cross the North Atlantic for comfort. You came because your leader believes there is wealth to be found. And unfortunately for you, finding that wealth may involve fighting. Modern movies often portray Vikings as fearless warriors who loved battle. The truth is far less exciting. Most people throughout history did not enjoy combat, and Vikings were no exception. Because combat is not glorious. Combat is frightening. As the ship approaches the shore, your heart begins to beat faster. The men around you become quieter. No one tells jokes. No one sings. Everyone understands the risk. You step into the cold water and pull the ship onto the beach. Your boots immediately fill with icy seawater. This is not an encouraging start. The group moves inland carefully. The weather remains cold. Your clothes remain wet, and every step reminds you that you have spent far too many days sitting on a wooden boat. Eventually, you reach a small settlement. This is the moment that legends celebrate. The brave Viking warriors, the dramatic battle cries, the glorious victory. Reality, however, is much less dramatic. Reality involves confusion, fear, mud, and an alarming amount of running. Nobody wants to be hit by a sword. Nobody wants to be struck by an axe. And nobody wants to discover whether their shield is actually strong enough. You grip your weapon tightly. Your hands are shaking, not because you are weak, because you are human. The first sounds of battle are terrifying. People shouting, metal striking wood, the cries of injured men. The chaos is overwhelming. There are no organized battle plans, no inspiring speeches, no heroic music, only confusion and fear. If you are lucky, the battle ends quickly. If you are unlucky, it lasts longer, much longer. The problem with medieval combat is that even if you survive, survival itself creates new problems. A small cut can become infected. A broken bone may never heal properly. A damaged eye remains damaged forever. There are no antibiotics,
no hospitals, no emergency surgery. In fact, one of the greatest dangers in history was not dying during battle. It was surviving battle. Imagine receiving a wound that would be considered minor today, perhaps a deep cut on your arm. In the modern world, you would visit a hospital. In the Viking world, you hope for the best. And hope is not always an effective medical treatment. As evening approaches, the excitement of battle quickly disappears. Now there are injured people, exhausted people, hungry people, and everyone is cold. Again. You sit beside a small fire. Your body hurts. Your feet hurt. Your back hurts. You are tired in ways I never imagined possible. Someone nearby speaks quietly about returning home. Another person stares silently into the flames. Nobody talks about glory anymore, because glory is difficult to appreciate when you have not slept properly in several days. As darkness falls, you begin to understand something important about Viking life. Most of it was waiting. Waiting for food, waiting for better weather, waiting for ships, waiting for spring, waiting to discover whether you would survive another year. The heroic stories that survive through history represent only a tiny part of reality. The reality was discomfort. The reality was uncertainty. And the reality was that almost everyone, regardless of courage or strength, eventually lost their battle against age, illness, injury, or simple bad luck. You lie down beneath the cold night sky. There is no comfortable bed waiting for you, no warm house, no guarantee of tomorrow. Only the stars above, the wind around you, and the growing realization that perhaps being a Viking was not the exciting adventure you once imagined. And unfortunately, the hardest part of Viking life may still be waiting for you. Because eventually, if you survive the battles, the storms, the hunger, and the cold, you must face something even more challenging: growing old in the Viking world.
Boring history for sleep. Why you wouldn't survive as a Viking. Part 10. After surviving the cold winters, the endless work, the hunger, the sickness, and the uncertainty of daily life, you might begin to wonder how the Vikings managed to keep going. The answer, at least in part, was faith. Not faith that life would become easier, not faith that tomorrow would necessarily be better, but faith that the world, despite all its hardships, still made sense. To understand Viking life, you must understand that the world around them was filled with unseen forces. The wind was not simply wind, the storm was not simply weather, and bad luck was never merely bad luck. Everything had meaning, everything had a cause, and often that cause involved the gods. Imagine waking before dawn on a cold winter morning. The sky is still dark, the longhouse is quiet, the fire burns softly. Before beginning another difficult day, you offer a silent prayer, perhaps to Thor, asking for strength, perhaps to Odin, asking for wisdom, or perhaps simply asking that your family survive the winter, because survival itself often felt like a gift. The Viking world was populated by powerful gods and mysterious beings. There was Odin, the wise and complicated ruler of the gods. There was Thor, protector of humanity and master of thunder. There was Freyr, associated with fertility and good harvests. And there were countless other spirits, creatures, and forces that people believed existed all around them. To modern ears, these beliefs may sound unusual, but imagine living in a world without science, a world where storms appeared without warning, where disease struck suddenly, where crops failed unexpectedly. In such a world, searching for meaning was perfectly reasonable. Thunderstorms were especially dramatic. When lightning flashed across the sky and thunder shook the earth, Many Vikings believed that Thor was riding through the heavens with his mighty hammer. And honestly, if you had never studied meteorology, that explanation might sound fairly convincing. Religion was not separate from daily life. Religion was daily life. Before voyages, people prayed. Before harvests, people prayed. Before battles, people prayed. And after surviving any of these experiences, people prayed again. Because uncertainty surrounded everything. Sacrifices were also part of religious life. Animals might be offered to the gods. Special ceremonies might be held during important seasons. Communities gathered together, seeking protection, prosperity, and good fortune. Nobody knew whether the gods would answer, but asking seemed wiser than not asking. Superstitions were equally important. A strange dream might be considered a warning. An unusual animal sighting might be interpreted as a sign. Good luck and bad luck were taken very seriously. After all, when life is already difficult, tempting fate feels like an unnecessary risk. Imagine preparing for a long sea voyage. The weather appears favorable. The ship is ready. The crew is prepared. Then someone notices an omen, perhaps a bird behaving strangely, perhaps an unsettling dream. Suddenly, confidence disappears, because when your life depends on surviving storms, paying attention to possible warnings begins to seem like a very sensible strategy. The Vikings also believed deeply in fate. There was a powerful idea that every person's destiny had already been woven. Some events could not be avoided. Some endings could not be changed. This belief may sound frightening, yet perhaps it was also comforting, because if certain things were destined to happen, then not every tragedy required an explanation. Not every hardship was someone's fault. Sometimes life was simply difficult because life itself was difficult. And life in the Viking Age was certainly difficult. As night falls, you sit quietly beside the fire. Outside, the wind blows across the dark landscape. Somewhere far away, thunder echoes across the mountains. The children move closer to the warmth. The older members of the family exchange silent glances. Perhaps they think of Thor. Perhaps they think of fate. Or perhaps they simply hope that tomorrow's weather will be better. The fire crackles softly. Shadows dance across the wooden walls. And in that moment, surrounded by darkness, cold, and uncertainty, you understand something important. The Vikings did not believe because life was easy. They believed because life was hard. Faith gave meaning to suffering. It gave comfort during loss, and it offered hope in a world where hope was often in short supply. As the storm continues outside and the warmth of the fire slowly fades, you wrap your blanket around yourself and prepare for sleep. Tomorrow will bring more work, more uncertainty, and, if the gods are willing, another chance to survive. Because in the Viking world, surviving one more day was sometimes miracle enough.
As you settle into your place beside the fire tonight, listening to the wind pushing against the walls of the longhouse, there is one subject that nobody in the Viking world can avoid: death. Not because Vikings were obsessed with death, but because death was everywhere. In the modern world, many people spend years without witnessing death firsthand. In the Viking Age, that would have been almost impossible. People died during winter. People died from illness. People died at sea. People died in accidents. And yes, sometimes people died in battle. As a result, every Viking grew up understanding something that modern society often tries to ignore. Life was uncertain, and tomorrow was never guaranteed. Imagine that you were living in a small Scandinavian village sometime during the 9th century. Winter has finally ended. The snow is melting. For the first time in months, people begin to feel hopeful. Then, suddenly, someone becomes sick. At first, it appears to be a simple fever, nothing unusual. But after several days, the fever becomes worse. The person stops eating. They stop speaking. The family gathers around. Everyone understands what may happen, and unfortunately, there is very little anyone can do. There are no hospitals, no antibiotics, no emergency doctors. Only prayers, hope, and waiting. Eventually, the longhouse becomes quiet. The fire continues to burn, but one voice is missing. Death has come once again. For Vikings, death was not a rare event. It was part of ordinary life. This reality shaped the way they viewed the world, because when death can arrive at any moment, every journey becomes dangerous, every winter becomes frightening, and every goodbye becomes important. After a person died, preparations began quickly. Family members washed the body. Friends gathered. Stories were shared. Memories were remembered. Because although Viking life was difficult, relationships still mattered. People mourned. People grieved. People cried. The popular image of Vikings often presents them as fearless warriors without emotion. History suggests something much more human. They loved, they worried, they suffered, and they mourned those they lost. Some Vikings were buried in graves. Others were buried with personal belongings, a favorite weapon, jewelry, tools, objects believed to be useful in the next world. Because many Vikings believed that death was not necessarily the end, it was another journey, perhaps the most important journey of all. Modern movies often suggest that every Viking expected to enter Valhalla. This is not entirely true. Valhalla was believed to be the Hall of Odin, where selected warriors prepared for the final battle of Ragnarok. But not everyone expected to go there. And honestly, not everyone wanted to spend eternity preparing for more fighting. Other beliefs existed. Some imagined peaceful afterlives. Others believed in different spiritual realms. The truth is that Viking beliefs were complex and perhaps intentionally mysterious, because nobody truly knew what happened after death, and that uncertainty frightened people then, just as it frightens people now. Imagine attending a funeral on a cold spring afternoon. The sky is gray. The wind moves softly through the trees. Family members stand silently together. Nobody speaks very much, because there are no perfect words. There never are. A fire burns. Smoke rises slowly into the sky, and as you watch the flames, you begin to understand something important about Viking society. Their courage did not come from believing they would never die. Their courage came from knowing that they absolutely would, and continuing anyway. Continuing to farm, continuing to sail, continuing to love their families, continuing to wake up every morning despite knowing how uncertain life really was. As evening approaches, everyone slowly returns home. The funeral is over, but tomorrow, life continues. The animals still need food. The fields still need work. The children still need care. Because one of the harshest truths about history is that life rarely pauses for grief. You return to your longhouse. The fire burns softly. Outside, darkness settles over Scandinavia. The stars appear overhead,
And for a moment, you think about all the people who came before you, the countless Vikings who survived winters, survived hunger, survived storms, until eventually they could survive no longer. Perhaps that is why the Vikings valued stories so deeply, because stories allowed people to survive even after they were gone. Their names remained, their memories remained, their lives mattered. As the fire slowly fades and sleep begins to arrive, you pull your wool blanket closer. The wind whispers outside, the darkness grows deeper, and somewhere beyond the mountains, beyond the sea, and beyond the understanding of anyone living in the Viking Age, the greatest mystery of all still waits patiently. Tomorrow, if you are fortunate enough to see it, another day will begin. But tonight, beneath the smoke-filled roof of a Viking longhouse, you allow yourself to rest.
Now that you have survived the long winter, the storms, the hunger, and even the constant possibility of death, you might think life as a Viking would finally become easier. Unfortunately, the Viking world has some disappointing news. The work is about to begin. In fact, if there was one thing that truly defined the Viking experience, it was not warfare, it was not exploration, and it certainly was not adventure. It was work, endless work. Imagine waking up before sunrise on a cool spring morning somewhere in Scandinavia around the year 900. The sky is still dark. The fire in the longhouse has nearly burned out. Your body aches from yesterday's labor. And before you even open your eyes completely, you already know something important. Today will be difficult, just like yesterday, and probably just like tomorrow. You slowly climb from your bed of straw. The floor beneath your feet is cold. The air smells of smoke, damp wood, and livestock. Outside, the first signs of daylight are appearing over the distant hills. This would be a beautiful moment if you did not have 12 hours of physical labor waiting for you. The animals need attention first. They are hungry, and unlike humans, they do not understand the concept of sleeping in. You feed the sheep, you check the goats, you inspect the cattle. You make sure nothing escaped during the night. Only after the animals are cared for can you think about yourself. Breakfast, if it can be called that, is simple. A little porridge, some dried fish, perhaps a piece of bread if supplies are good. No coffee, no tea, no energy drinks. Just enough food to begin another exhausting day. And now, the real work begins. If it is spring, there are fields to prepare. The ground must be cleared, the soil must be worked, seeds must be planted. Every task requires strength, every task requires time, and every task must be done by hand. There are no tractors, no engines, no machines. You are the machine. Hour after hour you work, your hands become sore, your back begins to ache, your shoulders burn, and yet stopping is not an option, because the crops you plant today may determine whether your family survives next winter. Suddenly, your motivation becomes very clear. Of course, farming is only part of the problem. There is also wood. There is always wood. Wood for cooking, wood for heating, wood for repairing buildings, wood for making tools. It sometimes feels as though the entire Viking economy is based upon moving pieces of wood from one location to another. And honestly, perhaps it was. You spend hours chopping, hours carrying, hours stacking.
By midday, you are already exhausted. Unfortunately, midday means that approximately half of the day's work remains. If you happen to live near the coast, fishing becomes another responsibility. Modern fishing trips often involve comfortable boats, specialized equipment, and perhaps a sandwich. Viking fishing is slightly different. The boat is small, the weather is cold, the water is dangerous, and there is a reasonable chance that you will spend several hours becoming increasingly disappointed by fish. Still, you continue, because fish means food, and food means survival. Women, men, children, and older family members all contribute. Everyone works, everyone helps, because in the Viking world there is no alternative. Even children have responsibilities. They collect water, they gather firewood, they care for animals, they learn skills, because childhood itself is preparation for work. As evening finally approaches, you return home. You are tired, not ordinary tired, not modern tired after spending too much time answering emails. You are the kind of tired that reaches into your bones, the kind of tired that makes sitting down feel the greatest luxury imaginable. Dinner is waiting, perhaps stew, perhaps fish, perhaps a meal that somehow contains both fish and disappointment. But it is warm, and after a long day, warm food feels like a miracle. The family gathers around the fire. The light flickers against the wooden walls. Someone tells a story. Someone repairs clothing. Someone quietly falls asleep while sitting upright. No one judges them, because everyone understands. Tomorrow morning, all of this will happen again. The animals will still be hungry. The wood will still need chopping. The fields will still need attention. And winter, sooner or later, will return. As you stare into the fire, you begin to understand something remarkable about ordinary Viking people. Their greatest achievement was not crossing oceans. It was not winning battles. It was enduring. Enduring difficult work, enduring uncertainty, enduring a world that demanded everything they had every single day. And somehow, despite all of that, they still found time to laugh, to tell stories, to raise children, to love one another. Perhaps that was their greatest victory of all. The fire burns lower. Outside, the night grows colder. Your muscles ache, your hands hurt, and tomorrow's work is already waiting. So you pull your rough wool blanket around yourself, close your eyes, and prepare for another day in one of history's hardest jobs. The job of simply being alive.
If you have somehow survived childhood, disease, hunger, freezing winters, dangerous sea voyages, and years of endless work, then congratulations. You have accomplished something extraordinary. You have grown old in the Viking Age. Unfortunately, growing old in the Viking world was not exactly a reward. In fact, it often presented an entirely new set of challenges. Imagine waking up one cold morning after decades of hard labor. The fire in the longhouse is burning softly. Outside, the wind moves through the trees. Everything appears normal, but your body feels different. Your back hurts, not because you slept badly. Your back simply hurts now. Your knees hurt, your hands hurt, and there is a pain in your shoulder that has been present for so many years
that you cannot longer remember what life felt like before it arrived. Welcome to old age in Viking Scandinavia. Modern people often think of retirement as a time for rest, a time for hobbies, a time for travel, a time for finally relaxing. The Vikings had a somewhat different approach. Their retirement plan consisted mainly of continuing to work until they physically could not continue any longer. There were no pensions, no retirement communities, no comfortable rocking chairs beside fireplaces. There was only work, and then more work. Perhaps when you were young, carrying firewood felt easy. Now it feels heavy, very heavy. Perhaps walking across the fields once felt effortless. Now every step reminds you of injuries from long ago. Maybe you injured your leg during a storm at sea. Maybe you hurt your back while lifting supplies. Or perhaps years of chopping wood have simply won the battle against your joints. Your body remembers everything, and unfortunately, it enjoys reminding you. Yet, despite these difficulties, life continues. The animals still need food. The family still needs help. Winter still arrives every year. The world does not become easier simply because you become older. But old age also brings something valuable: experience. You know when storms are coming. You know how much food must be stored for winter. You know which plants can help treat illness. You know which stories are worth telling and which mistakes are worth avoiding. You become a living memory of your family. And in a world without books, internet, or libraries, memory is one of the most valuable things a person can possess. Children gather around you. They ask questions. What was it like to sail across the sea? What was the worst winter you ever survived? Did you ever meet famous warriors? Sometimes you answer. Sometimes you simply smile, because some memories become too large to explain. As the years continue to pass, another reality becomes impossible to ignore. Friends begin disappearing. People you grew up with, people you worked beside, people you laughed with during long winter nights. One by one, they are gone. This may be one of the hardest parts of growing old. Not the physical pain, not the cold, not even the work, but the silence left behind by people who once filled your life. Still, each morning you wake up, you add wood to the fire, you step outside, you breathe the cold air, and you continue. Because continuing is what Vikings have always done. One winter evening, after another long day, you sit quietly inside the longhouse. The younger members of the family are talking. Children are laughing. The fire crackles softly. Outside, snow falls across the dark Scandinavian landscape. For a moment, you close your eyes. You remember your childhood. You remember your first voyage. You remember the people who are no longer here. And suddenly, you understand something that younger people cannot yet understand. Life was never about becoming rich. It was never about becoming famous. It was never even about becoming a hero. It was about surviving. It was about building a family. It was about enduring difficult times and appreciating the rare moments of peace. The stories told centuries later would speak of kings, warriors, and conquerors. But the true heroes of the Viking Age were often ordinary people. The mothers who raised families, the farmers who survived harsh winters, the fishermen who risked the sea, and the elderly who carried the memories of everyone who came before. As the fire slowly burns lower, you wrap your wool blanket around yourself. It still itches. It still smells faintly of smoke. Some things never change. Outside, the wind continues its endless journey through the frozen north. Inside, surrounded by family, memories,
and the warmth of a fading fire, you prepare for another night. Because tomorrow, if you are fortunate enough to see it, another day of being a Viking will begin. And somehow, after all these years, you will endure that day too.
If there was one enemy that every Viking feared, respected, and could never truly defeat, it was not a rival warrior. It was not a storm at sea, and it was certainly not a dragon. It was winter, the long, dark, relentless Scandinavian winter. Imagine waking up one morning and discovering that the sun will only appear for a few hours. Imagine knowing that this will continue not for days, but for months. Welcome to winter in the Viking Age. The first snow arrives quietly. At first, it seems beautiful. The mountains become white. The forests become silent. The world appears peaceful for perhaps 2 days. Then reality arrives. The roads disappear beneath snow. The rivers freeze. The fields become useless. Travel becomes dangerous. And suddenly, every decision you made during the summer becomes extremely important. Did you collect enough firewood? Did you preserve enough food? Did your livestock survive? Because if the answer to any of those questions is no, winter quickly becomes terrifying. Inside the longhouse, life changes. People spend more time indoors. The fire burns constantly, or at least you hope it does, because if the fire goes out during the night, everyone wakes up very unhappy and very cold. The days become shorter, much shorter. Sometimes it feels as though the sun has simply abandoned Scandinavia altogether. You wake in darkness, you work in darkness, and eventually you go back to sleep in darkness. Modern people often complain about winter weather. Perhaps it is raining. Perhaps the temperature is uncomfortable. Perhaps the internet connection becomes slow. The Vikings faced slightly different problems. Their concern was whether they would survive until spring. Outside, the cold becomes almost impossible to describe. The air hurts your face. Your hands become numb. Your breath turns to mist. Even simple tasks become difficult. Collecting water becomes difficult. Feeding animals becomes difficult. Walking becomes difficult. Everything requires more effort. Everything requires more courage. The animals suffer too. The sheep huddle together. The cattle eat through precious supplies. The dogs search for warmth beside the fire. Everyone is fighting the same enemy, cold. As winter continues, another danger appears: boredom. This may sound surprising, but imagine spending months inside a smoky wooden building with the same people every day. There is no television, no radio, no internet, no electricity, just stories. Fortunately, Vikings were very good at telling stories. Stories about heroes, stories about monsters, stories about great voyages across dangerous seas, stories about gods and the end of the world itself. Because if you are trapped indoors for several months, storytelling becomes less of a hobby and more of a survival skill. Some evenings are peaceful. The fire crackles softly. Snow falls outside. Children sleep near their parents. For a brief moment, the longhouse feels warm and safe. Then someone remembers that the food supplies are running low, and suddenly everyone becomes quiet, because hunger always waits nearby during winter. Every meal becomes a calculation. Every piece of wood becomes valuable. Every day survived becomes an achievement. As the weeks pass, people begin counting the signs of spring. The days grow slightly longer. The air becomes slightly warmer. The snow begins to melt. Hope slowly returns.
But winter is not finished yet. Winter is never finished until it decides to be. And that uncertainty may have been the hardest part. Not knowing. Not knowing whether food would last. Not knowing whether illness would come. Not knowing whether the family would survive until summer. One evening, as another snowstorm shakes the walls of the longhouse, you sit quietly beside the fire. You pull your wool blanket closer. It still does not feel warm enough. The wind screams outside. The flames flicker. And for a moment, you understand something important. The Vikings did not survive because they were fearless. They survived because they accepted that fear was part of life. They were cold. They were hungry. They were frightened. And yet, they continued. Perhaps that was their greatest strength. Not bravery, not power, but endurance. The endurance to face another winter, and another, and another. As the fire burns lower and sleep slowly arrives, you close your eyes and listen to the storm outside. Because tomorrow, if you are lucky, winter will continue. And in the Viking world, surviving another day of winter was sometimes the greatest victory of all.
After surviving the freezing winters, the endless labor, the hunger, the storms at sea, the sickness, and the countless uncertainties of everyday life, you have finally reached the last chapter of your journey as a Viking. And perhaps, after everything you have experienced, you have begun to understand something important. Being a Viking was never really about adventure. It was about endurance. Imagine one final evening in your long house. Outside, another Scandinavian winter is slowly approaching. The wind moves through the trees. The sky darkens early, as it always does. Inside, the fire burns quietly in the center of the room. Its light flickers against the wooden walls that have surrounded you for most of your life. You sit close to the warmth, not because you enjoy sitting, but because standing has become difficult. The years have been long, very long. You remember your childhood. You remember waking before sunrise to feed animals. You remember carrying firewood through deep snow. You remember your first journey across the sea. At the time, it felt like the beginning of a great adventure. Now, after many years, it feels like another difficult week that somehow lasted a lifetime. You remember the storms, the terrifying storms, the moments when the sea seemed determined to swallow everyone aboard. You remember the hunger, the winters when food became scarce, the evenings when families quietly counted what remained and hoped it would last until spring. You remember the sickness, the fevers, the injuries, the people who disappeared too soon, friends, parents, children, neighbors. The Viking world taught everyone the same lesson: nothing lasts forever. And perhaps that is why people valued the things that did last: family, stories, memory. As the evening grows darker, younger members of the family move around the longhouse. Children laugh. Someone tells a story. Someone repairs a tool by the light of the fire. Life continues. It always has. You look at the faces around you. Some resemble people you knew long ago. Some have dreams of voyages you will never take. And suddenly, you realize that this has always been the purpose of survival. Not glory, not wealth, not fame. Simply giving the next generation a chance to continue. The stories future generations will tell about Vikings will be dramatic. They will speak of warriors, of kings, of battles, of conquests. And yet, those stories will miss something important.
Most Vikings were never heroes in the traditional sense. They were farmers, mothers, fishermen, children, grandparents, ordinary people who lived extraordinary, difficult lives. People who woke every morning knowing that survival itself was uncertain, and yet they woke up anyway. Perhaps that was the greatest act of courage, not fighting, not conquering, but continuing. Outside, snow begins to fall, softly, quietly, the same way it has fallen for countless generations. The fire grows weaker, the room becomes quieter. You pull your wool blanket around your shoulders. It is old, it smells faintly of smoke, and somehow, after all these years, it still is not quite warm enough. But that is all right. Very few things in the Viking world were ever quite enough. As you sit beside the fading fire, listening to the wind and the distant sounds of family, you understand the final truth about being a Viking. You probably wouldn't survive, not because you were weak, not because you lacked courage, but because Viking life demanded something extraordinary from ordinary people. It demanded endurance. And those who survived did so not because they were fearless, but because they faced fear, hunger, cold, grief, and uncertainty every day. And somehow they continued. The fire slowly fades into glowing embers. The longhouse grows silent. The winter wind whispers outside. And after a lifetime spent surviving one difficult day after another, you finally allow yourself to rest.
As you settle into your place beside the fire tonight, listening to the wind pushing against the walls of the longhouse, there is one subject that nobody in the Viking world can avoid: death. Not because Vikings were obsessed with death, but because death was everywhere. In the modern world, many people spend years without witnessing death firsthand. In the Viking Age, that would have been almost impossible. People died during winter. People died from illness. People died at sea. People died in accidents. And yes, sometimes people died in battle. As a result, every Viking grew up understanding something that modern society often tries to ignore. Life was uncertain, and tomorrow was never guaranteed. Imagine that you were living in a small Scandinavian village sometime during the 9th century. Winter has finally ended. The snow is melting. For the first time in months, people begin to feel hopeful. Then, suddenly, someone becomes sick. At first, it appears to be a simple fever, nothing unusual. But after several days, the fever becomes worse. The person stops eating. They stop speaking. The family gathers around. Everyone understands what may happen, and unfortunately, there is very little anyone can do. There are no hospitals, no antibiotics, no emergency doctors. Only prayers, hope, and waiting. Eventually, the longhouse becomes quiet. The fire continues to burn, but one voice is missing. Death has come once again. For Vikings, death was not a rare event. It was part of ordinary life. This reality shaped the way they viewed the world, because when death can arrive at any moment, every journey becomes dangerous, every winter becomes frightening, and every goodbye becomes important. After a person died, preparations began quickly. Family members washed the body. Friends gathered. Stories were shared. Memories were remembered. Because although Viking life was difficult, relationships still mattered. People mourned. People grieved. People cried. The popular image of Vikings often presents them as fearless warriors without emotion. History suggests something much more human. They loved, they worried, they suffered,
and they mourned those they lost. Some Vikings were buried in graves. Others were buried with personal belongings, a favorite weapon, jewelry, tools, objects believed to be useful in the next world. Because many Vikings believed that death was not necessarily the end, it was another journey, perhaps the most important journey of all. Modern movies often suggest that every Viking expected to enter Valhalla. This is not entirely true. Valhalla was believed to be the Hall of Odin, where selected warriors prepared for the final battle of Ragnarok. But not everyone expected to go there, and honestly, not everyone wanted to spend eternity preparing for more fighting. Other beliefs existed. Some imagined peaceful afterlives. Others believed in different spiritual realms. The truth is that Viking beliefs were complex and perhaps intentionally mysterious, because nobody truly knew what happened after death, and that uncertainty frightened people then, just as it frightens people now. Imagine attending a funeral on a cold spring afternoon. The sky is gray. The wind moves softly through the trees. Family members stand silently together. Nobody speaks very much, because there are no perfect words. There never are. A fire burns. Smoke rises slowly into the sky, and as you watch the flames, you begin to understand something important about Viking society. Their courage did not come from believing they would never die. Their courage came from knowing that they absolutely would, and continuing anyway. Continuing to farm, continuing to sail, continuing to love their families, continuing to wake up every morning despite knowing how uncertain life really was. As evening approaches, everyone slowly returns home. The funeral is over, but tomorrow, life continues. The animals still need food. The fields still need work. The children still need care. Because one of the harshest truths about history is that life rarely pauses for grief. You return to your longhouse. The fire burns softly. Outside, darkness settles over Scandinavia. The stars appear overhead, and for a moment you think about all the people who came before you. The countless Vikings who survived winters, survived hunger, survived storms, until eventually they could survive no longer. Perhaps that is why the Vikings valued stories so deeply, because stories allowed people to survive even after they were gone. Their names remained, their memories remained, their lives mattered. As the fire slowly fades and sleep begins to arrive, you pull your wool blanket closer. The wind whispers outside. The darkness grows deeper, and somewhere beyond the mountains, beyond the sea, and beyond the understanding of anyone living in the Viking Age, the greatest mystery of all still waits patiently. Tomorrow, if you are fortunate enough to see it, another day will begin. But tonight, beneath the smoke-filled roof of a Viking longhouse, you allow yourself to rest.
After surviving the cold, the hunger, and the miserable experience of sailing across the North Atlantic, you have finally arrived at the moment that popular culture associates most closely with Viking life: battle. This is the moment that movies love: the dramatic music, the heroic speeches, the fearless warriors charging bravely into combat. Unfortunately, real Viking battles were considerably less cinematic and considerably more terrifying. Imagine standing on a cold field somewhere in northern Europe around the year 900. The sky is gray, the ground beneath your feet is wet and muddy. The air smells of smoke, sweat, and fear. Most importantly, everyone around you appears to be carrying something sharp. This is not encouraging. You grip your shield tightly. Your hands are already sweating, not because you are a coward,
because you are a human being with a functioning sense of self-preservation. Across the field, another group of armed men waits. They look nervous too. This may be one of the least discussed facts about medieval warfare. Almost nobody wanted to be there. Despite what later stories would suggest, most people throughout history did not enjoy fighting. They fought because they believed they had to, because their leaders ordered them, because their families depended on them, or because the alternative seemed even worse. The waiting is perhaps the hardest part. Minutes pass, then more minutes. Nobody moves. Everyone watches. Everyone listens. And everyone hopes that somehow this entire situation will resolve itself without anyone having to experience what happens next. Unfortunately, history rarely cooperates. Eventually, someone shouts. Someone else begins running. Suddenly, everything happens at once. The first thing you notice is the noise. People screaming, metal striking wood, boots slipping in mud. The sound is overwhelming. Then comes the confusion. Modern audiences often imagine medieval battles as carefully organized events. In reality, they were often chaotic and frightening. Dust fills the air. People push from every direction. You struggle to see what is happening. You struggle to breathe. And you struggle to remember why becoming a farmer no longer seemed an acceptable career choice. Your shield suddenly becomes the most important object you have ever owned. You hold it tightly, very tightly, because the realization arrives quickly. You do not actually want to hit anyone. What you really want is for nobody to hit you. This turns out to be a very popular opinion. The battle continues, or perhaps only a few minutes have passed. Time behaves strangely during frightening experiences. Your arms hurt, your legs hurt, your shield feels heavier than any object has ever felt before, and you discover another unpleasant truth about combat. It is exhausting. Movies rarely show warriors becoming tired after 3 minutes of fighting. Real human bodies, however, have strong opinions on the subject. People fall, people panic, people run. Some individuals demonstrate extraordinary bravery. Others demonstrate extraordinary speed while moving in the opposite direction. Both reactions are completely understandable. Then there are the injuries. Not the dramatic injuries from modern films, the real ones. A small cut, a broken finger, a twisted ankle, an injury that might seem minor today, but in the Viking Age, even a small wound could become dangerous. There are no antibiotics, no emergency rooms, no surgical specialists waiting nearby. There is only survival, and survival often depends upon luck. Eventually, the battle ends. Most battles throughout history ended far sooner than people imagine, not because everyone was defeated, but because eventually enough people decided they had experienced quite enough fighting for one day. The field grows quiet. The shouting stops. The fear remains. You sit down. Your hands are shaking. Your clothes are wet. Your entire body aches. And suddenly, something becomes very clear. There was nothing glorious about any of this. There was nothing exciting, nothing heroic, only exhaustion, relief, and the simple gratitude of still being alive. As evening approaches, fires are lit. People gather together quietly. Some speak, some remain silent. Everyone understands that tomorrow could have ended very differently. Perhaps that is why Vikings told stories about brave warriors, because the reality of battle was too frightening and too painful to remember exactly as it happened. Stories transformed fear into courage, they transformed suffering into honor, and they transformed survival into heroism. As darkness settles across the battlefield, you pull your wool cloak around your shoulders. It smells of smoke, it smells of sweat, and it smells faintly of fear. The stars slowly appear overhead. The wind grows colder, and as you close your eyes beside the fading fire, you realize one final truth about Viking warfare. The goal was never to become a hero. The goal was simply to survive. And tonight, somehow, you have.
After surviving the freezing sea voyages, the terrifying battles, and the endless labor of everyday life, you might imagine that at least one part of being a Viking would be enjoyable. Surely, after all that work, there must be good food, there must be feasts, there must be delicious meals waiting beside the fire. Unfortunately, the Viking Age has disappointing news once again. Most Viking food was not particularly exciting, and sometimes it was not particularly plentiful either. Imagine waking up on a cold morning somewhere in Scandinavia around the year 900. The fire in the longhouse is still burning softly. Outside, frost covers the ground. Inside, everyone is hungry. This is not unusual. People in the Viking world spent a remarkable amount of time thinking about food, finding food, preparing food, preserving food, and worrying about whether there would be enough food in the future. Breakfast, if you are fortunate, consists of porridge. Again, it was porridge yesterday. It will probably be porridge tomorrow. And there is a strong possibility that it was also porridge on several days last week. The porridge is made from barley or oats. It is warm, it is filling, and after eating it every day for several years, it may also become your greatest enemy. Still, you eat, because hunger is a far worse companion than boredom. Bread is another common food. But do not imagine soft, warm loaves fresh from a modern bakery. Imagine dense, heavy bread that requires significant effort simply to chew. Some historians might call it nutritious. Your jaw muscles might call it a form of physical exercise. Fish is everywhere. Dried fish, salted fish, smoked fish, fish preserved for winter, fish eaten during travel, fish eaten because there is absolutely nothing else available. Eventually, you begin to suspect that the ocean itself is personally responsible for most Viking meals. Sometimes there is meat. This is good news, very good news. Unfortunately, meat is not available every day. Animals are valuable. A cow provides milk. A sheep provides wool. Killing them for dinner is not always the best long-term strategy. As a result, meat often becomes a special occasion rather than an everyday experience. When feasts do happen, however, they are memorable. There is roasted meat. There is ale. There are stories. There is laughter. For one evening, life almost feels comfortable. Then the feast ends, and tomorrow you return to porridge. The problem with Viking food was not necessarily that it tasted terrible. The problem was that there was never quite enough of it. A bad harvest could create disaster. A long winter could destroy food supplies. A failed fishing season could threaten an entire community. Every meal carried a hidden question. Will there be enough tomorrow? This question becomes especially frightening during late winter. The food stores become smaller. The barrels become emptier. Everyone notices. Nobody wants to discuss it. But everyone thinks about it. Perhaps portions become slightly smaller. Perhaps meals become less frequent. Perhaps everyone simply pretends not to be hungry. The Vikings even had a name for this difficult period, the hungry season, which unfortunately sounds exactly as unpleasant as it actually was.
Imagine opening the food storage area and discovering that there are only a few weeks of supplies remaining. Outside, snow still covers the ground. Spring remains far away, and suddenly every meal feels important. People become creative, very creative. Anything edible becomes valuable. Plants, roots, berries preserved months ago. Anything that might provide enough energy to survive until warmer weather arrives. And sometimes warmer weather arrives just in time. Sometimes it does not. As evening approaches, you sit beside the fire with another simple meal. Perhaps there is stew. The exact ingredients remain unclear. In fact, one of the great mysteries of historical cooking may be determining exactly what was inside medieval stew. The answer often appears to have been whatever happened to be available. Still, the stew is warm. The fire is warm. And after a long day of work, warmth itself begins to feel like luxury. You eat slowly, not because the food is especially delicious, but because making it last feels important. Outside, the cold wind blows across the Scandinavian landscape. Inside, family members sit together around the fire. Someone tells a story. Someone laughs quietly. And for a brief moment, nobody thinks about tomorrow's hunger. Perhaps that was one of the greatest skills of ordinary Vikings. Not fighting, not sailing, not conquering, but finding reasons to continue despite uncertainty, finding comfort despite hardship, and finding gratitude for even the simplest meal. As the fire burns lower and another long day comes to an end, you wrap yourself in your wool blanket. You are still hungry. You are still cold. And tomorrow's breakfast will almost certainly be porridge. Again. But tonight, at least, you have survived. And in the Viking world, that was often enough.
After surviving the endless work, the terrifying sea voyages, the freezing winters, and the disappointing food, you might assume that at least returning home would bring some comfort. After all, home is supposed to be where you rest, where you feel safe, where you recover from the hardships of the world. Unfortunately, in the Viking Age, home itself was often one of the hardships. Imagine approaching your home after a long day of work sometime around the year 900. The sun is setting. The air is cold. The wind moves across the Scandinavian countryside. In the distance, you see the longhouse. It is large. It is sturdy. And from far away, it almost looks comfortable. Almost. As you step inside, the first thing you notice is the heat. This sounds promising. Unfortunately, the second thing you notice is the smoke. A great deal of smoke. The Viking longhouse was built around a central fire. This fire provided warmth. It provided light. It provided a way to cook food. It also provided enough smoke to make you question every decision that led to this point in your life. The smoke slowly drifted upward toward openings in the roof. At least that was the plan. In reality, much of it simply remained inside the building. As a result, the average Viking spent a considerable amount of time surrounded by smoke. Your clothes smell like smoke. Your hair smells like smoke. Your blanket smells like smoke. Eventually, you stop noticing. Or perhaps your body simply gives up trying to complain. The longhouse itself is crowded. Very crowded. Parents, children, grandparents, visitors, and sometimes animals. Everyone shares the same space. There are no private bedrooms, no personal offices, no quiet corners where you can spend time alone. Privacy, as modern people understand it, is largely a fantasy. If you want a moment of silence, your best option is probably standing outside during a snowstorm. The floor beneath your feet is made of packed earth. Sometimes there are wooden platforms. Sometimes there is straw. Neither option would receive particularly positive reviews from modern interior designers. At night, everyone sleeps close together, not because they enjoy it, but because staying warm is more important than personal space. Your bed consists of straw, animal skins, and hope, mostly hope. You lie down, you adjust your blanket, you attempt to become comfortable. The blanket itches. The straw pokes you. Someone nearby begins snoring. Another person starts coughing. A baby starts crying. And somewhere in the darkness, an animal makes a noise that nobody can immediately identify. Sleep, you discover, is not always guaranteed.
Winter makes everything more difficult. The fire must continue burning. Wood supplies must last. Cold air enters through every opening. No matter how carefully the longhouse is built, winter always finds a way inside. You wake up, you add more wood, you return to sleep, then you wake up again. Because survival requires maintenance, even during the night. Lighting presents another challenge. There is no electricity, no light switches, no bedside lamps. Most light comes from the fire. Candles and oil lamps exist, but they are expensive and limited. As a result, darkness becomes an ordinary part of life. When the sun disappears, much of the world simply becomes dark, very dark. Perhaps this explains why storytelling became so important. Stories filled the darkness. Stories filled the silence. Stories made long winter nights feel slightly shorter. Of course, the longhouse is not entirely unpleasant. There is warmth. There is family. There is safety. And after spending several days aboard a Viking ship in the middle of a storm, the longhouse begins to resemble a luxury resort, which may say more about Viking ships than Viking houses. One evening, after another exhausting day, you sit beside the fire. The flames crackle softly. Someone nearby repairs clothing. Children listen to stories. Outside, snow begins falling quietly. For a moment, everything feels peaceful. Then the smoke blows directly into your face, and reality returns. As you cough politely into the darkness, you realize something important. The Vikings did not survive because their lives were comfortable. They survived because they adapted. They accepted the smoke. They accepted the cold. They accepted the discomfort, because there was no alternative. And perhaps that was the true strength of ordinary Viking people. Not that they enjoyed hardship, but that they learned how to live with it. The fire burns lower. The room grows quieter. The wind whispers outside the wooden walls. You pull your scratchy wool blanket around your shoulders and prepare for sleep. It is not comfortable. It is not peaceful, but it is home. And tonight, in the Viking world, that is enough.
After surviving the cold, the hunger, the endless work, the dangerous sea voyages, and the smoky longhouses, you might begin to feel a small sense of accomplishment. After all, you have made it this far. Perhaps things will finally become easier. Unfortunately, the Viking world has one more unpleasant surprise waiting for you. You are about to get sick. In the modern world, becoming ill is usually an inconvenience. You stay home, you drink water, perhaps you take medicine. Maybe you spend the day watching television while complaining about your symptoms. In the Viking Age, however, illness was something entirely different. It was frightening. Imagine waking up one morning somewhere in Scandinavia around the year 900. Something feels wrong. Your body aches, your head hurts, you feel cold, and yet, strangely, you are also sweating. At first, you assume that you simply slept badly. Unfortunately, by midday, you can barely stand. Now, everyone in the longhouse is worried. Not because they dislike illness. Nobody likes illness. They are worried because they understand something that you are only beginning to realize. A simple sickness can become deadly very quickly. There are no doctors nearby. There are no pharmacies. There are no emergency services. There is only the knowledge passed down through generations and hope, mostly hope. Someone prepares herbal remedies. Someone places extra blankets over you. Someone says a prayer, because in the Viking world, every possible solution is worth trying. You spend the day lying near the fire. The room feels too hot, then it feels too cold. You sleep, you wake up, you sleep again. Time becomes confusing. Outside, life continues. Animals still need feeding. Wood still needs chopping. Winter, unfortunately, does not pause simply because you have developed a fever. Perhaps the illness improves. Perhaps it does not.
This uncertainty is what makes sickness so terrifying. A cough might remain a cough, or it might become something much worse. A fever might disappear after a few days, or it might continue until there is nothing left to do. In the modern world, people often underestimate how dangerous ordinary illnesses once were. A sore throat, a chest infection, a stomach illness, any of these could change a person's life forever. And then there are injuries. Imagine chopping wood on a cold morning. You make one mistake, the axe slips, your hand is cut. Today, this would be painful. In the Viking Age, it could become catastrophic. At first, the injury seems manageable. You wrap the wound, you continue working, because there is always work. But a few days later, something changes. The wound becomes swollen, then painful, then dangerous. Infections were among the greatest enemies of people throughout history, not because they arrived dramatically, but because they arrived quietly. A small injury became a large problem. A large problem became a tragedy. Children suffered the most. Parents worried constantly. A child who was laughing yesterday might develop a fever tomorrow, and there was often very little anyone could do except wait and hope again. Yet, despite all of this, Viking communities cared for one another. Family members stayed nearby, neighbors helped when possible, stories were told, prayers were offered. People did not face illness entirely alone. Perhaps that human connection mattered more than anything else. One evening, after several days of sickness, you sit up beside the fire. Your fever has finally begun to fade. You feel weak, very weak, but you are alive. The fire crackles softly. Outside, snow falls quietly. Family members smile when they see you awake, and suddenly something ordinary becomes extraordinary. Breathing feels extraordinary. Warm food feels extraordinary. Simply surviving another day feels extraordinary. Perhaps this is one of the greatest differences between the modern world and the Viking world. Today, we often expect survival. The Vikings did not. They hoped for it. They worked for it. They prayed for it, but they never assumed it. As the fire burns lower and another cold night settles across Scandinavia, you wrap your wool blanket around yourself. It still smells of smoke. The longhouse is still uncomfortable. Winter is still waiting outside. But tonight, none of those things seem quite so important. Because tonight, after facing one of history's greatest enemies, you are still here. And in the Viking world, that was sometimes the greatest victory of all.
After surviving the freezing sea voyages, the endless work, the hunger, and the constant threat of illness, you might assume that traveling on land would be a welcome relief. After all, solid ground sounds comforting. No storms, no giant waves, no terrifying possibility of sinking into the North Atlantic. Unfortunately, traveling on land in the Viking Age came with its own collection of problems. And by problems, we mean nearly everything. Imagine waking up before dawn because you need to travel to another settlement several days away. Perhaps you are trading goods. Perhaps you are visiting relatives. Perhaps you have simply made a series of unfortunate decisions. Whatever the reason, your journey begins in darkness. You put on your wool clothing, you gather your supplies, you check your boots. Then you say goodbye to the comfort of your longhouse, which is unfortunate because after several days of travel, even a smoky Viking longhouse begins to feel luxurious. The first thing you notice about land travel is the roads, or rather, the lack of roads. Modern travelers expect highways. The Vikings had forests, lots of forests,
and mud, an astonishing amount of mud. During the summer, paths could become dusty and uneven. During the autumn, they became wet and slippery, and during the winter, they became something even worse. Winter. You begin walking. The air is cold, your pack is heavy, and after approximately 30 minutes, you begin questioning whether this journey is truly necessary. Unfortunately, turning around would mean admitting that you made a mistake, and human beings have always found this difficult. As the hours pass, the landscape changes slowly. Forests stretch endlessly, mountains rise in the distance, rivers block your path. Every obstacle requires time, every decision requires effort, and every mile feels considerably longer than it does on a modern map. There are no hotels, no roadside restaurants, no convenience stores. If you forget something important, there is no opportunity to stop and buy another one. You simply continue and hope for the best. Traveling with horses can help, but horses create their own problems. They need food, they need water, and they have very strong opinions about walking through difficult terrain. Sometimes the horse decides that the journey should stop, and there is surprisingly little you can do about it. Weather creates another challenge. Rain arrives unexpectedly, snow arrives eventually, wind arrives constantly. After several hours, your clothes become wet, then your boots become wet, then everything becomes wet. This appears to be a recurring theme in Viking life. As evening approaches, you begin searching for a place to sleep. This process is not enjoyable. There are no reservations, there are no inns in many areas, and there is certainly no guarantee of comfort. Perhaps you find shelter with another family. Perhaps you sleep beside a fire outdoors. Perhaps you spend the night wondering whether every sound in the forest represents a harmless animal or a very serious problem. The answer remains unclear. Nighttime travel is even more difficult. Darkness in the Viking world is truly dark. There are no streetlights, no flashlights, no glowing screens, only the moon. And unfortunately, the moon does not always cooperate. As you sit beside a small fire after another exhausting day, you begin to understand why most people rarely traveled unless they absolutely had to. Travel was not recreation, it was work, difficult work, dangerous work, and very tiring work. Yet, despite all of this, Vikings traveled. They crossed mountains, they crossed forests, they crossed entire continents. Not because it was easy, not because it was enjoyable, but because life demanded it. Trade demanded it, family demanded it, survival demanded it. The fire crackles softly, the stars shine overhead, your feet hurt, your back hurts, and tomorrow you still have many miles remaining. As you wrap yourself in a scratchy wool blanket and prepare for another uncomfortable night, you realize something important. The Vikings were not extraordinary because they loved adventure. They were extraordinary because they endured inconvenience on a scale that modern people would find almost impossible to imagine. And somehow, despite the mud, the cold, the hunger, and the exhaustion, they continued walking.
After surviving the freezing winters, the endless work, the dangerous sea voyages, the terrifying battles, and the exhausting travel, you might begin to hope that at least one part of Viking life was comfortable. Perhaps personal hygiene. Perhaps there were warm baths. Perhaps there were scented soaps. Perhaps there was some way to feel clean after spending several weeks surrounded by smoke,
livestock, and dried fish. Unfortunately, the Viking Age has disappointing news once again. Staying clean was difficult, very difficult. Now, to be fair, the Vikings actually cared more about personal hygiene than many people imagine. In fact, compared to some other medieval societies, Vikings had a reputation for being relatively clean, which sounds encouraging, until you remember what relatively clean meant 1,000 years ago. Imagine waking up on a cold morning somewhere in Scandinavia around the year 900. You have spent the night sleeping on straw. The long house is filled with smoke, someone nearby has been snoring for several hours, and outside the temperature is only slightly warmer than ice. This is apparently the perfect time to wash yourself. You step outside. The wind immediately informs you that this was a terrible decision. Water must first be collected, which means walking in the cold, carrying buckets, because indoor plumbing has not yet been invented. When you finally reach the water source, you discover another problem. The water is freezing. Not cold, not refreshing, freezing. You stare at the water. The water stares back. Neither side is happy about what is about to happen. Eventually, you wash, quickly, very quickly. You have now achieved cleanliness. You have also lost all feeling in your hands. The Vikings did have tools for personal grooming. They used combs. They cleaned their hair. They trimmed their beards. Archaeologists have found surprisingly large numbers of grooming tools. This suggests that Vikings cared about their appearance, or perhaps they simply became tired of finding pieces of straw in their hair. Either explanation seems reasonable. Hair maintenance itself was another challenge. There were no shampoos, no conditioners, no hair dryers, and certainly no styling products. There was only patience and occasionally disappointment. Beards required attention too. Modern culture often portrays Viking beards as magnificent works of art. In reality, maintaining a beard while spending most of your life farming, sailing, and surviving winter was not always easy. Sometimes your beard looked impressive. Sometimes your beard looked like evidence of poor decision-making. Then there was laundry. Laundry in the Viking world was not a quick household task. It was an event, an exhausting event. Clothes had to be washed by hand, in cold water, using simple cleaning materials. After several hours of hard work, your clothes might become cleaner, or they might simply become wet. Either way, you had accomplished something. The greatest challenge, however, was the longhouse itself. No matter how often you washed, you still lived inside a building filled with smoke. You still worked with animals. You still handled fish. You still spent most of your day performing physical labor. As a result, achieving complete cleanliness remained more an aspiration than a reality. And yet, despite all of this, Vikings took pride in their appearance. Historical accounts even mention that some people considered them unusually well-groomed, which perhaps tells us more about everyone else than it does about the Vikings. One evening, after another long day of work, you sit beside the fire. Your clothes are clean, or at least cleaner. Your hair has been combed. Your beard has been trimmed. For a brief moment, you feel almost civilized. Then smoke blows directly into your face. The dog shakes mud onto your clothing, and someone places a basket of dried fish beside you. Your brief experience with cleanliness has officially ended. As the fire crackles softly and the longhouse slowly grows quiet, you realize something important. The Vikings did not expect comfort. They did not expect luxury. They did not even expect to feel especially clean. They expected life to be difficult, and perhaps that expectation itself made them stronger.
You pull your wool blanket around your shoulders. It still smells faintly of smoke. It always will. Outside, the cold Scandinavian night settles over the world. Inside, surrounded by family, fire, and a remarkable amount of smoke, you prepare for sleep. And honestly, after everything you have survived, that feels clean enough.
After surviving the freezing sea voyages, the terrifying battles, and the endless labor of everyday life, you might imagine that at least one part of being a Viking would be enjoyable. Surely, after all that work, there must be good food. There must be feasts. There must be delicious meals waiting beside the fire. Unfortunately, the Viking Age has disappointing news once again. Most Viking food was not particularly exciting, and sometimes it was not particularly plentiful either. Imagine waking up on a cold morning somewhere in Scandinavia around the year 900. The fire in the longhouse is still burning softly. Outside, frost covers the ground. Inside, everyone is hungry. This is not unusual. People in the Viking world spent a remarkable amount of time thinking about food, finding food, preparing food, preserving food, and worrying about whether there would be enough food in the future. Breakfast, if you are fortunate, consists of porridge. Again, it was porridge yesterday. It will probably be porridge tomorrow. And there is a strong possibility that it was also porridge on several days last week. The porridge is made from barley or oats. It is warm, it is filling, and after eating it every day for several years, it may also become your greatest enemy. Still, you eat, because hunger is a far worse companion than boredom. Bread is another common food, but do not imagine soft, warm loaves fresh from a modern bakery. Imagine dense, heavy bread that requires significant effort simply to chew. Some historians might call it nutritious. Your jaw muscles might call it a form of physical exercise. Fish is everywhere. Dried fish, salted fish, smoked fish, fish preserved for winter, fish eaten during travel, fish eaten because there is absolutely nothing else available. Eventually, you begin to suspect that the ocean itself is personally responsible for most Viking meals. Sometimes there is meat. This is good news, very good news. Unfortunately, meat is not available every day. Animals are valuable. A cow provides milk. A sheep provides wool. Killing them for dinner is not always the best long-term strategy. As a result, meat often becomes a special occasion rather than an everyday experience. When feasts do happen, however, they are memorable. There is roasted meat, there is ale, there are stories, there is laughter. For one evening, life almost feels comfortable. Then the feast ends, and tomorrow you return to porridge. The problem with Viking food was not necessarily that it tasted terrible. The problem was that there was never quite enough of it. A bad harvest could create disaster. A long winter could destroy food supplies. A failed fishing season could threaten an entire community. Every meal carried a hidden question. Will there be enough tomorrow? This question becomes especially frightening during late winter. The food stores become smaller. The barrels become emptier. Everyone notices. Nobody wants to discuss it, but everyone thinks about it. Perhaps portions become slightly smaller. Perhaps meals become less frequent. Perhaps everyone simply pretends not to be hungry. The Vikings even had a name for this difficult period, the hungry season, which unfortunately sounds exactly as unpleasant as it actually was. Imagine opening the food storage area and discovering that there are only a few weeks of supplies remaining. Outside, snow still covers the ground. Spring remains far away, and suddenly
every meal feels important. People become creative, very creative. Anything edible becomes valuable. Plants, roots, berries preserved months ago. Anything that might provide enough energy to survive until warmer weather arrives. And sometimes, warmer weather arrives just in time. Sometimes it does not. As evening approaches, you sit beside the fire with another simple meal. Perhaps there is stew. The exact ingredients remain unclear. In fact, one of the great mysteries of historical cooking may be determining exactly what was inside medieval stew. The answer often appears to have been whatever happened to be available. Still, the stew is warm, the fire is warm, and after a long day of work, warmth itself begins to feel like luxury. You eat slowly, not because the food is especially delicious, but because making it last feels important. Outside, the cold wind blows across the Scandinavian landscape. Inside, family members sit together around the fire. Someone tells a story, someone laughs quietly, and for a brief moment, nobody thinks about tomorrow's hunger. Perhaps that was one of the greatest skills of ordinary Vikings. Not fighting, not sailing, not conquering, but finding reasons to continue despite uncertainty, finding comfort despite hardship, and finding gratitude for even the simplest meal. As evening approaches, you wrap yourself in your wool blanket. You are still hungry, you are still cold, and tomorrow's breakfast will almost certainly be porridge. Again. But tonight, at least, you have survived. And in the Viking world, that was often enough.
After surviving the freezing sea voyages, the endless work, the hunger, and the constant threat of illness, you might assume that traveling on land would be a welcome relief. After all, solid ground sounds comforting. No storms, no giant waves, no terrifying possibility of sinking into the North Atlantic. Unfortunately, traveling on land in the Viking Age came with its own collection of problems. And by problems, we mean nearly everything. Imagine waking up before dawn because you need to travel to another settlement several days away. Perhaps you are trading goods. Perhaps you are visiting relatives. Perhaps you have simply made a series of unfortunate decisions. Whatever the reason, your journey begins in darkness. You put on your wool clothing, you gather your supplies, you check your boots. Then you say goodbye to the comfort of your longhouse, which is unfortunate because after several days of travel, even a smoky Viking longhouse begins to feel luxurious. The first thing you notice about land travel is the roads, or rather, the lack of roads. Modern travelers expect highways. The Vikings had forests, lots of forests, and mud, an astonishing amount of mud. During the summer, paths could become dusty and uneven. During the autumn, they became wet and slippery, and during the winter, they became something even worse. Winter. You begin walking. The air is cold, your pack is heavy, and after approximately 30 minutes, you begin questioning whether this journey is truly necessary. Unfortunately, turning around would mean admitting that you made a mistake, and human beings have always found this difficult. As the hours pass, the landscape changes slowly. Forests stretch endlessly, mountains rise in the distance, rivers block your path. Every obstacle requires time, every decision requires effort, and every mile feels considerably longer than it does on a modern map. There are no hotels, no roadside restaurants, no convenience stores. If you forget something important, there is no opportunity to stop and buy another one. You simply continue and hope for the best. Traveling with horses can help, but horses create their own problems. They need food, they need water, and they have very strong opinions about walking through difficult terrain.
Sometimes the horse decides that the journey should stop, and there is surprisingly little you can do about it. Weather creates another challenge. Rain arrives unexpectedly, snow arrives eventually, wind arrives constantly. After several hours, your clothes become wet, then your boots become wet, then everything becomes wet. This appears to be a recurring theme in Viking life. As evening approaches, you begin searching for a place to sleep. This process is not enjoyable. There are no reservations, there are no inns in many areas, and there is certainly no guarantee of comfort. Perhaps you find shelter with another family. Perhaps you sleep beside a fire outdoors. Perhaps you spend the night wondering whether every sound in the forest represents a harmless animal or a very serious problem. The answer remains unclear. Nighttime travel is even more difficult. Darkness in the Viking world is truly dark. There are no streetlights, no flashlights, no glowing screens, only the moon. And unfortunately, the moon does not always cooperate. As you sit beside a small fire after another exhausting day, you begin to understand why most people rarely traveled unless they absolutely had to. Travel was not recreation, it was work, difficult work, dangerous work, and very tiring work. Yet, despite all of this, Vikings traveled. They crossed mountains, they crossed forests, they crossed entire continents. Not because it was easy, not because it was enjoyable, but because life demanded it. Trade demanded it, family demanded it, survival demanded it. The fire crackles softly, the stars shine overhead, your feet hurt, your back hurts, and tomorrow you still have many miles remaining. As you wrap yourself in a scratchy wool blanket and prepare for another uncomfortable night, you realize something important. The Vikings were not extraordinary because they loved adventure. They were extraordinary because they endured inconvenience on a scale that modern people would find almost impossible to imagine. And somehow, despite the mud, the cold, the hunger, and the exhaustion, they continued walking.
After surviving the long winters, the exhausting sea voyages, the endless labor, and the constant uncertainty of everyday life, you may have started to believe that being a Viking man was one of the hardest lives imaginable. And in many ways, you would be correct. But tonight, we are going to consider another possibility. What if you were a Viking woman? Because while stories of the Viking Age often focus on warriors and explorers, much of Viking society depended on the labor, skill, and endurance of women. And unfortunately, this was not an easy job. Imagine waking before sunrise on a winter morning somewhere in Scandinavia around the year 900. The longhouse is still dark, the fire has nearly gone out, everyone else is asleep, but your day has already begun. The fire must be restarted, water must be collected, food must be prepared, animals must be checked, and this is all before sunrise. Modern people often discuss multitasking. Viking women did not discuss multitasking, they simply lived it. The first challenge of the day is the fire. Keeping a fire alive throughout a Scandinavian winter was not merely convenient, it was essential. Without fire, there is no warmth. Without warmth, there is no cooking. And without cooking, life becomes considerably more difficult. So you kneel beside the ashes, you add wood, you blow gently, you wait, and eventually the flames return.
This small victory is only the first of many. Next comes food preparation. Grain must be ground, bread must be baked, stew must be prepared, milk must be processed, and all of this takes time, a great deal of time. In the modern world, preparing a meal might require 30 minutes. In the Viking world, preparing a meal could become the primary activity of the day. Then there is clothing. Every piece of clothing worn by your family requires work. Wool must be cleaned, wool must be spun, thread must be created, clothing must be woven, then repaired again. And after all of that effort, the clothing still manages to itch. It is difficult not to take this personally. Children create another challenge, not because children are unusual. Children have always been children, but because raising children in the Viking Age required constant attention. A child who wanders too far, a child who becomes sick, a child who falls into icy water. Every ordinary childhood event carried extraordinary risks. And yet, despite these dangers, families continued because they had to. When the men traveled, which happened frequently, the responsibility for the household often fell entirely upon women. This meant managing food supplies, managing workers, managing animals, managing children, and preparing for the possibility that the men might not return. This was not a temporary inconvenience, it was a way of life. Imagine standing in the doorway of the longhouse during winter. Snow falls steadily, the wind blows across the landscape. Weeks have passed since the ships departed. There is no way to send a message, no way to know what has happened. There is only waiting and continuing to do the work that must be done. Perhaps this required a different kind of courage, not the courage of battle, but the courage of uncertainty, the courage of responsibility, the courage of waking every morning and continuing despite fear. As evening approaches, the day's work is still not finished. Clothing must be repaired, food supplies must be checked, children must be cared for, the fire must be maintained, tomorrow's work must be prepared, and tomorrow, of course, everything will begin again. One winter evening, after everyone else has fallen asleep, you sit quietly beside the fire. The flames flicker softly. Outside, the wind howls through the darkness. Your hands ache, your back aches. Your entire body reminds you that today has been long, very long. And yet, looking around the longhouse, you see something remarkable. The family is safe. The children are sleeping. The food stores remain full enough. The fire continues burning. You have succeeded, not in conquering kingdoms, not in discovering new lands, but in accomplishing something far more difficult. You have kept ordinary life alive. Perhaps that was the true foundation of Viking society. Not warriors, not kings, not explorers, but ordinary women performing enormous amounts of work every single day. As the fire slowly burns lower and another exhausting day finally comes to an end, you wrap yourself in your scratchy wool blanket. Outside, winter continues. Inside, life continues. And tomorrow, before the sun rises, your work will begin again.
After surviving the freezing winters, the dangerous sea voyages, the endless household labor, and the constant threat of sickness, you might begin to wonder how Vikings managed to feed themselves at all. The answer, unfortunately, is that they worked constantly. Because for most Vikings, life was not about raiding distant lands or discovering new continents. It was about farming. And farming in Scandinavia during the Viking Age was less of a profession and more of a continuous argument with nature. Imagine waking up on a spring morning somewhere in Norway around the year 900. The snow has finally melted, the sun rises earlier, the birds have returned. For the first time in months, you feel a small amount of optimism. This feeling will not last, because today marks the beginning of farming season, and farming season never truly ends. The first challenge is the land itself. Scandinavia is beautiful. It has mountains, it has forests, it has rivers. What it does not always have is excellent farmland. Large portions of the landscape are rocky, uneven, and determined to resist your efforts. Unfortunately, you do not have the option of finding better land somewhere else. This is the land you have, so this is the land you must fight. You begin by clearing stones. There are many stones, an unreasonable number of stones. You move them, then you discover more stones underneath the first stones. It sometimes feels as though the earth itself is creating additional work simply for entertainment. After many days of labor, the fields are finally ready. Now comes planting. Barley, oats, rye, seeds that may determine whether your family survives the coming winter. Suddenly, farming feels considerably more important. The weather, unfortunately, has its own opinions. Too much rain damages crops. Too little rain damages crops. Unexpected frost damages crops. Strong winds damages crops. At a certain point, you begin to suspect that farming consists mostly of watching the sky and becoming increasingly anxious. Summer arrives. This should be good news. Instead, it simply means more work. The fields require constant attention. Animals require constant attention. Fences require repair. Tools require repair. Everything requires repair. You work from sunrise until sunset, sometimes longer, because crops do not care that you are tired. The harvest season brings both hope and fear. The crops have grown. Now they must survive long enough to be collected. Every day becomes important. Every hour matters. A storm arriving at the wrong moment can destroy months of labor. Imagine standing in your field, looking at crops that represent an entire year's survival. Dark clouds appear on the horizon. You have never moved so quickly in your life. The harvest finally arrives. Families work together. Neighbors help one another. Everyone understands the stakes. Because this is not simply food. It is winter. It is survival. It is life itself. After the harvest comes storage. Food must be dried. Food must be protected. Food must last. You count supplies repeatedly. You calculate. You worry. Then you calculate again, because winter always consumes more than expected. Animals create another challenge. The sheep need care. The cattle need care. The goats need care. And all of them possess a remarkable ability to create problems at exactly the wrong moment. A fence breaks. An animal escapes. A storm arrives. Suddenly, your carefully planned day no longer exists. One autumn evening, after another 14 hours of labor, you sit beside the fire in the longhouse. Your hands hurt, your back hurts, your knees hurt, and there is dirt in places you did not realize dirt could reach. Outside, the wind grows colder. Winter is coming. Again. And despite all your work, despite all your planning, despite all your effort, you still do not know whether it will be enough. Perhaps this was the greatest challenge of Viking farming. Not the labor, not the weather, not even the uncertainty. It was the knowledge that survival required everything you had, every day, every season, every year. And yet somehow, the Vikings continued. They planted, they harvested, they endured. Not because farming was rewarding, not because farming was enjoyable, but because tomorrow depended entirely on what they accomplished today. The fire burns lower. The longhouse grows quiet. Outside, the cold Scandinavian night settles over the land you spent your entire life trying to tame. And as you pull your scratchy wool blanket around your shoulders and close your eyes, you realize one final truth. The Vikings did not conquer nature. They simply survived it. And sometimes, that was victory enough. After surviving the endless farming,
the brutal winters, the hunger, and the constant struggle against nature, you may be tempted to believe that at least one aspect of Viking life was truly impressive. And you would be correct. Viking ships were remarkable. They were masterpieces of engineering. They crossed vast oceans. They carried explorers to distant lands. They connected communities across Europe. There was only one problem. Actually traveling on them was absolutely terrible. Imagine arriving at the shore before sunrise, somewhere in Norway, around the year 900. The air is cold. The wind is stronger than you would prefer. And in front of you rests a beautiful Viking longship. Its wooden hull gleams in the morning light. Its dragon-headed prow points toward the horizon. For a brief moment, you feel proud. Then you remember that you will soon spend several weeks living on it. The feeling of pride disappears rather quickly. The first thing you notice after climbing aboard is the lack of space. There are no cabins. There are no beds. There are no private rooms. There is, in fact, very little of anything that modern travelers would describe as comfortable. Instead, there are wooden benches. These benches serve as seats. They serve as storage spaces. And eventually, they serve as your bed. The ship departs. At first, everything feels exciting. The sail catches the wind. The shoreline slowly disappears. The sea sparkles beneath the morning sun. You begin to understand why people tell stories about adventure. Then it starts raining. This introduces you to one of the most important facts about Viking travel. You are now wet. You will remain wet, and there is a good chance that you will continue being wet for the foreseeable future. Rain enters the ship. Waves enter the ship. Spray enters the ship. Eventually, you begin to suspect that the ocean has developed a personal interest in your discomfort. Sleeping becomes an adventure of its own. You attempt to lie down. The ship rocks. You close your eyes. Someone snores. A wave crashes over the side. The wind changes direction. You open your eyes again. Congratulations. You have now experienced a full night of Viking sleep. You are somehow more tired than when you started. Food presents another challenge. Fresh food disappears quickly. After that, there is dried fish, then more dried fish, then enough dried fish to convince you that civilization itself may have been a mistake. Water must be stored carefully. Fire is dangerous aboard a wooden ship, and everyone aboard begins to smell increasingly unpleasant. This is not anyone's fault. It is simply a natural consequence of placing several exhausted human beings together on a floating piece of wood for weeks. Then come the storms. The storms deserve special attention, because nothing reminds you of your own mortality quite like sitting in a wooden ship while enormous waves attempt to throw you into the North Atlantic. The wind screams. The ship creaks. Water crashes over the deck. Everyone works. Everyone prays. And everyone privately promises that if they survive, they will never complain about farming again. Of course, if you survive the storm, another problem appears. Boredom. Day after day, there is water. More water. Then additional water. Occasionally, someone spots a bird. This becomes the most exciting event of the week. Conversations become repetitive. Stories are repeated. Arguments begin, then end, then begin again. Eventually,
everyone aboard develops a profound appreciation for silence. And yet, despite all of this misery, Vikings continued to sail. They crossed the North Sea. They reached Iceland. They settled Greenland. Some even reached North America. Not because sea travel was enjoyable, not because it was comfortable, but because the sea offered opportunities that the land could not. Trade, adventure, land, hope. One evening, after an exhausting day at sea, you sit quietly near the side of the ship. The sun slowly disappears below the horizon. The ocean turns golden. For a brief moment, everything becomes peaceful. The wind becomes softer. The waves become gentler. The stars begin appearing overhead. And suddenly, despite the cold, despite the hunger, despite the discomfort, you understand why people kept returning to the sea. Not because it was easy, but because it was extraordinary. The ship rocks gently beneath you. The night grows colder. You wrap your damp wool cloak around your shoulders. Tomorrow will bring more wind, more waves, and almost certainly more discomfort. But tonight, beneath the endless northern sky, you have survived another day. And in the Viking world, that was more than enough.
After surviving the weather, the hunger, the battles, the sea voyages, and the countless challenges of everyday life, you might begin to think that perhaps the greatest achievement of the Vikings was simply surviving adulthood. But for many Vikings, there was an even greater challenge: raising children. Because in the Viking world, childhood was not a time of comfort. It was a time of preparation. Imagine waking up one cold morning in Scandinavia around the year 900. The fire in the longhouse has almost gone out. The wind is pushing against the wooden walls, and somewhere nearby, a child has already been awake for quite some time. Unfortunately, that child is your responsibility. Modern parents face many challenges. The Vikings faced all of those challenges, plus winter, famine, disease, and the occasional possibility of invasion. In other words, parenting was not exactly relaxing. Children in the Viking Age grew up quickly, very quickly. There were no years spent deciding what career they might pursue in the future. The future had already decided. Everyone worked, everyone contributed, everyone learned how to survive. A young child might help collect firewood, they might carry water, they might feed animals, and as they grew older, their responsibilities grew with them. This was not because Viking parents were cruel, it was because survival required everyone to participate. Imagine being 8 years old and discovering that your afternoon activity involves helping prepare food for the winter. Imagine being 10 years old and learning how to repair fishing nets. Imagine being 12 years old and realizing that adults now expect you to behave like an adult. Suddenly, modern homework begins to seem surprisingly reasonable. Parents worried constantly, not only about food, not only about weather, but about illness, because childhood in the Viking world was dangerous, very dangerous. A fever that seems minor today could become catastrophic. A small injury could become serious. A harsh winter could threaten everyone. As a result, every child who survived to adulthood represented an extraordinary achievement. And perhaps this is why family bonds were so important. Families depended upon one another, not emotionally, although that mattered too. They depended upon one another physically, practically, entirely.
Grandparents shared stories and knowledge. Parents worked endlessly. Children learned quickly. Everyone had a role. And if one person could no longer contribute, life became more difficult for everyone else. Of course, children were still children. They played games, they laughed, they explored. Archaeologists have discovered toys from the Viking Age, small wooden figures, simple games, objects created not for survival, but for joy. This may be one of the most touching facts about human history. No matter how difficult life becomes, people still make time for childhood. Imagine a winter evening inside the longhouse. Outside, snow falls silently. The wind howls through the darkness. Inside, the fire burns brightly. Children sit beside their parents. Someone tells a story. Perhaps it is a story about a great hero. Perhaps it is a story about a dangerous sea voyage. Or perhaps it is simply a story told to make another difficult winter night feel a little shorter. For a few moments, nobody thinks about tomorrow. Nobody thinks about hunger. Nobody thinks about cold weather. Everyone simply listens. And perhaps these moments were what made all the hardship worthwhile. As the years pass, the children grow older. The little boy carrying firewood becomes the man sailing across the sea. The little girl listening to stories beside the fire becomes the woman keeping a family alive during winter. The cycle continues. It always has. And perhaps that was the greatest responsibility of all, not merely surviving, but teaching the next generation how to survive as well. As the fire burns lower and the children slowly drift to sleep, you pull your wool blanket around your shoulders. The longhouse is still smoky. The night is still cold. Tomorrow will still be difficult. But tonight, surrounded by family, stories, and the quiet sounds of life continuing, you understand something important. The Vikings did not build their world through strength alone. They built it through families and through the extraordinary effort of ordinary people raising children in one of the hardest places and times in human history.
After surviving the freezing winters, the endless labor, the dangerous sea voyages, and the constant uncertainty of daily life, you might hope that at least one aspect of Viking existence offered peace. And in some ways, it did. Religion. Unfortunately, like most things in the Viking world, religion was also deeply frightening. Imagine waking up one morning somewhere in Scandinavia around the year 900. Outside, a storm has arrived without warning. The wind shakes the walls of your longhouse. Rain strikes the roof. Lightning flashes across the distant mountains. And as you listen to the thunder rolling across the sky, you realize something important. You have absolutely no idea why any of this is happening. In the modern world, we have weather forecasts, we have science, we have satellite images. The Vikings had stories, and those stories explained everything. Or at least, they tried to. The thunder above your head, that might be the work of Thor. A successful harvest, perhaps the gods have shown favor. A terrible winter, perhaps someone, somewhere has made a very serious mistake. The Viking world was filled with unseen forces. Some were helpful, some were dangerous, and all of them demanded respect.
Imagine living in a world where every storm, every illness, every failed crop, and every unexpected event might have a supernatural explanation. Suddenly, daily life becomes much more complicated. Before a sea voyage, people prayed. Before planting crops, people prayed. Before battles, people prayed. And sometimes, after all of those prayers, terrible things still happened. This was perhaps one of the most difficult realities of Viking religion. There were no guarantees. The gods were powerful, but they were also unpredictable, rather like the weather or sheep. Stories filled Viking life. Stories about Odin, stories about Thor, stories about giants and monsters, stories about heroes who faced impossible challenges. These stories were not simply entertainment, they were explanations. They explained courage, they explained suffering, they explained why the world seemed so difficult and uncertain, and perhaps most importantly, they explained why people should continue despite that uncertainty. Imagine sitting inside a longhouse during a winter evening. Outside, snow falls silently. The wind howls across the frozen landscape. Inside, the fire burns brightly. An older member of the family begins telling a story. Perhaps it is about Thor's battles. Perhaps it is about Odin's wisdom. Perhaps it is about the end of the world itself. Because the Vikings believed that even the gods would one day face destruction. This event had a name, Ragnarok, the final battle, the end of everything. Now, modern people often try to avoid thinking about the end of the world. The Vikings, on the other hand, included it in their mythology, and somehow they still managed to sleep at night. This may have required remarkable emotional strength, or perhaps remarkable exhaustion. The idea that even the gods would someday struggle, suffer, and ultimately fall may have offered a strange kind of comfort. Because if even gods faced hardship, then perhaps ordinary people should not be surprised by hardship either. Perhaps suffering was not evidence of failure. Perhaps suffering was simply part of existence. As the years passed, these beliefs helped people survive, not by making life easier, but by making life meaningful. A difficult winter became a challenge to endure. A dangerous journey became a test of courage. A painful loss became part of a larger story. And stories, after all, have always helped human beings survive. One evening, after another long day of work, you sit quietly beside the fire. The flames dance across the smoky walls. Outside, the storm continues. Thunder echoes across the mountains. You listen, you think, you wonder what forces might exist beyond the darkness. And perhaps, for a moment, you feel both afraid and comforted at the same time. Because that may have been what religion meant to many Vikings. Not certainty, not safety, but companionship in an uncertain world. The fire burns lower. The storm slowly moves away. The longhouse grows quiet. You wrap your old wool blanket around your shoulders. Tomorrow will bring more work, more cold, more uncertainty. But tonight, beneath the endless northern sky, surrounded by stories older than memory itself, you allow yourself to rest.
After surviving 30 chapters of Viking life, you may be wondering if there was ever a moment when being a Viking was actually enjoyable. The answer, perhaps disappointingly, is that those moments did exist. They were simply surrounded by a remarkable amount of hardship. Tonight, as our long journey through the Viking Age comes to an end, we return to the question with which we began. Why wouldn't you survive as a Viking? The answer is not because you are weak, it is not because you lack courage, and it is certainly not because you would be unable to grow an impressive beard. The answer is much simpler. You would not survive because Viking life demanded an extraordinary level of endurance from ordinary people. Imagine one final winter evening somewhere in Scandinavia around the year 900. Outside, snow falls across the dark landscape. The wind moves through the forests and over the mountains. Inside the longhouse, the fire burns quietly. Its light dances across wooden walls blackened by years of smoke. You sit close to the warmth, not because it is comfortable, but because comfort in the Viking world is always relative. You think back over your life. You remember childhood, the endless chores, the cold mornings, the first time you realized that winter was not merely a season, it was an opponent. You remember the years of work, the farming, the fishing, the chopping of wood, the carrying of water, the countless tasks that seemed to repeat forever. You remember the sea, the storms, the fear, the cold spray striking your face while you wondered whether you would ever see home again. You remember the hunger, not dramatic hunger, not the kind that appears in stories, the ordinary hunger, the constant awareness that food supplies were never guaranteed. You remember the illnesses, the injuries, the friends and family members who disappeared too soon. You remember the winters, especially the winters, the darkness, the cold, the endless waiting for spring. And yet, somehow, you survived, not because life became easier, because you became stronger. Perhaps that was the true secret of the Viking world. Nobody was born prepared for it. People simply adapted because they had no alternative. The farmers adapted, the sailors adapted, the mothers adapted, the children adapted. Everyone adapted because survival was not optional. As you sit beside the fire, listening to the wind outside, you begin to understand why stories about Vikings became legends. Not because they were superhuman, not because they were fearless, but because they lived in a world that demanded courage every single day. The courage to face another winter, the courage to plant crops despite uncertainty, the courage to sail despite storms, the courage to love people despite knowing that life was fragile. Perhaps that is what modern people misunderstand most about history. The extraordinary people of the past were usually ordinary people facing extraordinary circumstances. One by one, family members begin falling asleep. The children sleep beneath wool blankets. The fire burns lower. The room grows quieter. Outside, the snow continues to fall just as it has for thousands of years. You pull your blanket around your shoulders. It is rough. It smells faintly of smoke. And somehow, after a lifetime spent surrounded by it, the smell feels comforting. You close your eyes. You think about the sea. You think about the forests. You think about the people you have loved and lost. And you realize that surviving the Viking Age was never about becoming a hero. It was about enduring. Enduring the cold, enduring the hunger, enduring the fear, enduring the uncertainty, and somehow
finding moments of warmth, laughter, and meaning in between. The fire fades into glowing embers. The wind whispers outside the longhouse. The Scandinavian night stretches endlessly around you. And after a lifetime of surviving one difficult day after another, you finally allow yourself to rest. Good night.